Friday weekend, you earned it.
He's our boy.
Okay, time?
No, there's still enough.
Yes.
At 6:30 PM, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Renee, can I please have the roll call?
Mr. Brewer,
Here.
Mr. McDaniel,
Here.
Ms. McCowan,
Here.
Mr. Parker,
Here.
Ms. Byrd,
Here.
Mr. McClure,
Here.
Mr. Griffith, Ms. Kendall,
Here.
Mr. Jablonski.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Moving to our consent items, starting with the item number 1, the consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of the minutes of October 12th, 2023 regular Planning Commission meeting. Item number 2, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of SFP 2324-6, consideration of a short form plat submitted by Hunter Miller Family LLC, Arc Engineering Consultants LLC for Eshelman Place for approximately 1.575 acres of property located on the south side of West Lindsay Street, approximately 133 feet east of South Berry Road. And item number 3, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of SFP-2324-7, consideration of a short form plat submitted by Abigail and Gregory Wampler Bobby Skaggs for Wampler Estates, a replat of Tract 2 Wildwood Estates 3rd Edition for approximately 1.66 acres of property generally located on the north side of East Rock Creek Road, east of Wildwood Drive. Does any member of the commission wish to remove any item from the consent docket?
I'd like to remove item 3, please.
Okay. Does any member of the audience wish to remove any item from the consent docket? Okay. Seeing none, I would take a motion perhaps to remove item 3 and then for the remaining items.
I move to remove item 3 from the consent docket and leave the remaining items as consent.
Okay, and is there a motion for the remaining consent items to approve?
I move to approve the remaining consent items. Thank you.
For items 1 and 2, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And a vote, please?
You may, whoops. Now you may vote. Everyone has voted, and the motion carried 8-0.
Thank you. Moving back to item 3 now as a non-consent item, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of SFP-2324-7, consideration of a short form plat submitted by Abigail and Gregory Wampler Bobby Skaggs for Wampler Estates, a replat of Tract 2 Wildwood Estates 3rd Edition for approximately 1.66 acres of property generally located on the north side of East Rock Creek Road, east of Wildwood Drive. I know this was a consent item, but do we have a staff presentation or a staff member that might be able to answer commission questions? Okay. If we don't have does the applicant present or does the applicant have a presentation?
I don't believe the
Yeah.
okay. But this is for,
Will you come up to the microphone if you don't mind? Thank you.
what they're trying to do here, this is a corner of Wildwood Lane and Rock Creek Road, just west of Northeast Baptist Church, and they're trying to subdivide one tract into 2 tracts. And since it's less than 3 acres, they're able to go through the short form plat process because all the public utilities are already in. So none of those need to be done.
Do you have a question for
No,
staff?
I don't have a question for staff or the applicant, just a short conversation because my comments relate to several items on the rest of the agenda tonight. So I'll go ahead and make those comments.
Do you, as the applicant, did you have a presentation or anything that you'd like to say before we get started?
No presentation. I was just wondering why it was removed from the consent docket.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll move to discussion.
Yeah, so my only comment is, it looks like it might be a change, and this is not a criticism or a complaint, looks like it might be a change to the character of the area, making subdividing it and making it into 2 lots, and this is related to, comments I'll make later on how we infill in the city, and if we want that infill to be happening tighter into the city center, or what we want that infill to look like as the city expands out. The lots are fairly large, so I'm not complaining about anything, but I just wanted to make this point now because it's going to come up repeatedly throughout the night.
Any other planning commission discussions or questions for staff or the applicant? I can speak a little bit to this item. I used to live in the neighborhood off of Quanah Parker Trail. So I did review this one a little bit more with a higher lens, even though it was a consent item. And I did find it to be an appropriate request when I kind of looked at that specific lot. I looked specifically at the drives that would be coming in and traffic considerations, and I still felt comfortable with it, being familiar with that area. Okay. If there's no other discussion, I would take a motion on this item.
Motion to approve.
Second?
And a vote?
You may vote. Everyone has voted, and the motion carried 8-0.
Thank you. Moving to our next item, number 4, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-29, 463 Elm LLC, request rezoning from R1 Single Family Dwelling District to SPUD Simple Plan for 13,430 square feet of property located at 463 Elm Avenue. And we'll take the staff presentation.
Good evening, Anna A. Starr with the Planning Department, and you will have to excuse me as I get through this. I'll be clearing my throat, trying to get over the remnants of a cold. So again, this is 463 Elm LLC. They're requesting to rezone from a single-family district to a simplified planned unit development. This is the subject tract. It is R1, as are the surrounding properties to the north, west, and south. To the east is institutional, that's the University of Oklahoma property. And here's the subject tract on the existing land use map. Currently, there's a single-family home and a garage apartment on this tract. And to the north and the west is a single-family home. To the south is also a single-family house with a garage apartment. And again, to the east is the OU parking lot. And this is the existing Norman 2025 plan. This is low-density residential proposed for this area. And this is the looking at the property straight on, and this is another view just so you could get a full view of the property. This is looking north up Elm and to the west, so you can see both there, and again to the west and see the other 2 properties, and then looking south down Elm Street. The proposal is a simplified plan unit development to create 2 lots in order to build 2 single-family dwellings. The SPUD is requesting a reduction in the minimum lot width from 50 feet wide to 42.5 feet wide in order to subdivide this 13,430 square foot parcel into 2 lots through the short form plat process. And each lot would contain 6,715 square feet after the platting process. This parcel is located in Core Norman, north of Boyd and the University of Oklahoma campus. It is densely populated and has a mix of different types of architectural styles of properties, including single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, and apartment houses. The existing a house and garage apartment on this lot were built in 1935 and 1940 prior to the zoning ordinance. And the subject tract was zoned R3 in 1954 with the adoption of the ordinance, zoning ordinance. But in June of 2016, this property, along with most of the properties on Elm Street between Boyd and Sims, was downzoned from R3 to R1 at the request of the majority of the property owners. The particulars of this SPUD include uses of detached single-family dwelling, short-term rental, accessory buildings, all things allowed under R1. Open space, they plan to have a maximum of 65%, which is what you see in R1. Excuse me. The SPUD does propose a single driveway, 10-foot wide, to be shared by the two properties, and it will lead to two parking spaces in the rear and a two-car carport in the rear for both parcels. There's no landscaping requirements for the parking lot that has less than 6 spaces. And they are proposing an 8-foot fence on the north side and a 6-foot on the south. Polycarts will provide the sanitation. During the processing of this rezoning request, staff did discover that there's an aerial power line running across the rear of the property, approximately 35 feet from the rear property line, that is not in a private or public easement. The applicants were made aware of this. They contacted the Utility Service Identification Service, OKI, who did come out and look at it and determined that there wasn't an issue with a dig-type construction. However, staff has let the applicant know that if there's any conflicts between the structures that are going to be built and the power line, they will have to be resolved at the time of building permit and construction. The existing sidewalk along Elm will be maintained, and it is proposed through the SPUD that the exterior materials will be siding, which is something seen in the neighborhood. And construction is proposed to commence upon approval of this SPUD with a target completion date of 2024. As noted earlier in the staff report, the subject property is located in a neighborhood that successfully downzoned from R3 to R1 in 2016, and it was in order to limit a density to single-family dwelling unit to a single-family dwelling unit per lot. While this SPUD does propose a single-family dwelling unit one single-family dwelling unit per lot, it is on a smaller lot width than what's typically seen on the street. To help address this, the impacts of this, they are proposing just that single driveway to reduce curb cuts and paving seen in the front yard. This, I would note, would require coordination between the two parcels once they're created. And as I noted earlier, they are at the request of neighbors putting in fencing along the rear property lines. There wasn't a requirement for a pre-development meeting or greenbelt or parkland. However, the applicant has let me know that they did hold a meeting with the neighborhood prior to tonight's meeting to get feedback from them. Fire department, public works, and traffic engineering do not have any comments. Utility has comments about abandoning the services at the main, and some other comments to do with the placement of water meters, and that the private and public portions of the lines will have to be verified. Staff forwards this request. Well, hold on. I think I have one more. There was one protest submitted. It is for 1.3% of the notification area. And I believe that was in your agenda packet, the protest letter. And with that, staff forwards this request for rezoning to a simplified plan and unit development ordinance 2324-29 to the Planning Commission for your consideration and recommendation to City Council. And with that, I will take any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you. Any questions by commission for staff?
I have one, and it might seem kind of random, but do you happen to know the width of the property of the owner that sent in the dispute letter?
Yes, it's 50-foot wide.
It's exactly 50 foot.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a question. You mentioned that the material on the house is siding. Is it like specified as what type of siding or?
I think they just listed painted siding. The applicant representative is here tonight, and he might be able to answer that better.
Any other questions by commission of staff? Okay, seeing none, I would take the applicant presentation.
My name is Mark Crittenbrink. I'm with Crittenbrink Architecture. I live at 428 West Eufaula. Ryan Dotson is the owner and actually the applicant who put together the SPUD request, and he was trapped in Dallas tonight, so he is not here. So I am here in his stead.
I don't know if I should forward it through, because he has a presentation that was put in, but, oh, okay.
Here we go.
Oh, it is. Sorry, I just didn't go far enough.
What do I
Okay.
do? List them up to advance it.
Okay, so you, it's a little bit of a trigger finger, but it's right.
Left to go
Left to
back.
go backwards, so, yeah.
Oh, that's not right.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what you take.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you all for allowing me to be here tonight. A little bit of history about this. Ryan called me probably 3.5 months ago and said, I'm looking at this property on Elm Street, would you come over and look at it? And so I did that Saturday. It is, as you know, 85 feet wide. It's 158 feet deep. It's a deep, deep, deep lot, but you need 50 feet for an individual single family. And he asked me what he could do, and I said, well, you can just build whatever you want. If you know, however big you want the house to be, you just have the one lot. And he said, do you think the neighborhood would like that? I said, I think the neighborhood, it's happened a couple times where these huge houses get built, and I live in the neighborhood, a little far away, but I'm in part of the neighborhood. And I think they'd be better to do something that was more proportionate, that was more in rhythm with the neighborhood. But I said, but that would require a SPUD, that would require some sort of special agreement. I said, well, let me think about it. He called me on Monday. He said, that's what I'd like to do. Now, at the time, the house on the left, we thought, well, we can probably keep that and add on to it and then tear down the garage apartment. On Wednesday of that week, I called Lee Hall to come over and visit with me about the project. And I just said, here are our options. And she said, I think I would prefer that you would go with the two individual houses because I think it'd be better proportionate for the neighborhood, better rhythm. And so, great. I said, well, that's what we'll do. And as we get further along, I'll pull you in for more commentary. Once we got into the existing house, it's lots of issues, plumbing, electrical, structural are the big ones. And so it was decided that we would tear that house down and build two new houses. Again, I called Lee and said, here's the direction that we're going to go because I don't want to take anybody by surprise. So we developed these two parcels, and as Anais said, with the reduced width, we thought, historically, you see a lot of something's messed up there, but historically, you see a lot of single drives in this neighborhood that service more than one house. And so we thought, well, let's try that, and that would be something that would help us accommodate the lack of width. We did the houses similar in footprint and styling, although they are different. The house on the left is a 3-bedroom house, and the house on the right is a 4-bedroom house. Because there isn't, as Annie said, there isn't a pre-development hearing, and so we sent letters out to everybody on that area, that circle. Do what? Notification area. We sent letters out to everybody there and had a meeting in our office last week, and about 8 people showed up. We walked through the project, what we were wanting to do. Pretty much it was well accepted. A few nuances. The reason it's an 8-foot fence on the north side is because, and I'm sorry, Jane, who's the neighbor to the north? Oh, okay, there you go. Marty, and he said, you know, I have a rent house right next door, and then I'm there, I'd rather have a higher fence, and so we agreed to the 8-foot fence. We also, at that time, had the 4-bedroom house on the north and the 3-bedroom house on the south. We flipped those as per his request because and we took out some windows that were on the second floor there to accommodate that. Trying to think a few other, Marty's going to establish the trees in that property line on the north, and we're going to work our fence around it. The OG&E thing is we have to maintain a certain vertical distance from the line. That was the only requirement, and all the Anais and Lisa, who works in my front office, have become good friends because she's called about 8 times, I need this, I need this, I need this. So I feel like we've accommodated that, and I felt like the neighborhood was pleased with what we showed them. I'm just going to throw here real quickly, this is a floor plan for the 3-bedroom house. I don't know that it matters much, but you can see a living, kitchen, master bedroom in back, and bathroom, and then a rear door. Second floor, study, our open lounge area at the top of the stair, bedroom and bathroom. Okay, and this is a 4-bedroom, and honestly, this footprint is exactly the same as a 3-bedroom. It differs on the top floor because we have 3 beds. So you can see again, 3 bedrooms, single bath on one, and a Jack and Jill bath on the other. This is a streetscape and what it looks like. Brew, to answer your, Cameron, excuse me, to answer your question, the materials will be a hardy board, horizontal siding, and then if you look close, you can see there's vertical siding on the upper floors. It's a beamed porch. We'll have a standing seam probably on the lower roof, the porch roof, and then composition shingles up high is what we proposed, and it's what we reviewed with the neighborhood. And you can see the central drive there. We're not showing landscaping, but there will be landscaping. The owner intends to, he lives in Dallas, but he wants his Norman house, as so many people do. So he'll split his time between Norman, because I know this is a question that will come up. He'll spend his time between Norman and Dallas. On the other side, he has 1 child at OU, 2 more coming. So he intends for them to live in the 4-bedroom house on the south side. And then when they graduate, he will sell that as a single-family home. I don't know what kind of relationship he has with his children, but I know I would have been hard-pressed in college to live next door to my parents. But, and I think that's, I made some notes. We are actually under on lot coverage. We're under on impermeable. 8-foot fence. Yeah, I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions by commission of the applicant?
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, and then we do have some audience comments. I have some sheets. I'm going to start calling people up. Just as a reminder, when I come up, please say your name and your address. If you would like a 30-second warning before your time is up, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to yield a full 3 minutes to you and then thank you for your comments. And that time does go quickly. So I'm going to start with Marty Sullivan.
I'm Marty Sullivan. I live at 457 Elm, immediately north of this. We did have a meeting with Mark, several of the neighbors last week, which we had a few discussions, a few concessions were made that were very favorable. Appreciate that. Biggest concern, 2 options real quick. At this point, this owner is absentee as far as I'm concerned. We've never met him, never laid eyes on him. He's never knocked on anybody's door that I know of, shaken a hand or said, this is what I'm going to do. That's a concern in the fact that I need to look this guy in the eye and know that he's going to do what he says he's going to do. Secondly, obvious concerns, but most importantly would be construction on this quick turnaround. We're talking about January. Currently has students living there that we've gotten to know over the last 3 years as good neighbors that are going to be uprooted in their senior year of school at OU on a real quick timeline, and good luck finding another place in January in Norman during school. Construction hours would be the other thing that I would be really concerned about. Time of day, when are we starting, when are we quitting, weekends. I live right behind the Noun, and every promise that was made to the neighborhood was broken on that. We had Sunday construction, we had construction till the sun went down, and I do not find that acceptable. So I will put those concerns on the note, but thank you for having me. Any questions?
Thank you.
Did I beat the 3 minutes?
You did great, under 2. Appreciate it. Okay, Jane Crumpley.
Jane Crumpley, 423 Elm. I think this will be a good project as it's been designed. I cannot say enough thanks to Mark Crittenden. I have never been invited to it's not a pre-development, an informal pre-development meeting where they listened to the neighbors. The amount of concessions that we got were incredible. The flipping of the 2 units made a huge difference to Marty Sullivan and those people because of windows. We originally started out talking about, could you reduce the windows? No problem. It was, again, I thank Mark so much for reaching out to get our input. We got, I think everybody pretty much got what they wanted. The fence, they're going to allow Habitat to come in to see what they can be salvaged. But again, a remarkable process. I share Marty's concerns about the construction hours. A mini dorm was built next to us, right on the property line some years ago, and it is a most unpleasant experience. We also experienced the blow. They were supposed to water down the hotel as it was being built. The dust came in. We had to have our house, it was being repainted because of the hailstorm. We had to have it repainted because of the amount of dust that blew in to it. And so it is just so important. I think the city has an ordinance. I think the hours allowed are something like 7 to 7. That's just way too much when you're that close to an owner-occupied home. But anyway, again, many thanks to Marty, and thanks to the owner for allowing him to do the concessions that the neighbors asked for.
Thank you very much for your comments. Moving to Patricia Duncan.
Patricia Duncan, 468 Elm Avenue, directly across the street from this property. I've clarified most of my questions with Mark today. My main concern was having a person in Dallas owning that property and not, I didn't understand what an SPUD was, and I was afraid that they were going to ignore what we went through so much trouble to get that neighborhood to stay neighborhoody. And I was really afraid that it was going to turn into a fraternity or a sorority. But Mark tells me that the owner plans to live in the one house and that his child is going to live in the other house. It is a 4-bedroom house, so I'm still a little bit wary. You know, that sounds very apartment-y to me. And I'm a little bit wary that they're having an apartment, but pretending not to have an apartment. So that's my reservation. But I know Mark's work and I've seen it, and your properties are beautiful, and I feel like that it stands to improve the property value of our home, possibly also the property taxes, unfortunately. But anyway, so thank you, Mark, for addressing my concerns, and next time check with me before you make the schedule. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Little off topic, but it might be capped at 5% each year for you. So. I have Joseph Waiters. Is that Walters? I apologize.
I'm Joseph Walters, and I am the spouse of Ms. Duncan, who just spoke, and I also live at 468 Elm Avenue. I want to thank staff for a very informative presentation. Thank you, and also Mr. Crittenbrink for being a very informative presentation. However, what I see here is a very creative way to violate the intent of the neighbors expressed in 2016 when these properties were rezoned from R3 to R1. And so I'm reserving, pending further investigation and research, our right to object at the city council stage of the proceedings. I would disagree with staff saying that the area is densely populated. It's not any more densely populated than many other neighborhoods in Norman, and it's hardly not Brooklyn or Manhattan. So, you know, densely populated, I guess, is a subjective term in the eyes of the beholder. But the bottom line is that the plan would violate the current zoning, and this is simply a creative way to violate the intent of the neighbors back in 2016 when this commission and the city council changed the zoning from R3 to R1. And I have some concerns about this being just the first stage in further developments like this on our nice, pleasant street. So those are my comments, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for your comments. I have a Rick Pendergraft.
Good evening. My name is Rick Pendergraft. I'm here representing Kathy Chanis. She lives at 458 Elm Street. I'm representing her as power of attorney. She's unable to attend tonight. Her protest with the rezoning is that they worked in the neighborhood to rezone from R3 to R1, and she feels that this is an attempt to work around that. And I think part of the intent from the neighborhood, for her perspective, when they rezoned from R3 to R1 was to limit the density, which you see on other parts of near campus where large units are being put in place with multiple bedrooms, and you have more people that are living there than what currently is. That was one of the reasons why they wanted to rezone to R1, was to prevent that. She feels like this is an attempt to do something similar to that. I think that's her biggest concern with that, is that the neighborhood work to get to R1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Are there any other audience comments that we didn't have any cards for yet? Come on up. And then and then if you'll say your name and address when you come up to the microphone.
Adam Ross, 3308 Winchester Circle. I don't live in the area. I live in Northwest Norman, but I would consider myself a stakeholder in this item because my wife and I, we want to start our family in Norman, and we would love to live in the core. But the core is the most expensive area in Norman. Few people disagree now that the housing affordability problem we have is largely because of supply and demand. So we need more supply, but we don't want to drastically change neighborhoods. I think this is a beautiful example of what we need. It is a gentle amount of density being introduced to the neighborhood. Hardly introduced. I think it actually matches most of the rest of the neighborhood. But it's not like, this isn't luxury housing. It's not gentrification. It's not going to force anyone away. I think they did a fantastic job on the design. I think Crittenbrink Architecture either did design or had a large part to do with the design. Maybe I'm wrong. With the church that I attend, St. Thomas More, which is a beautiful church as well. Yeah, I would like to extend my support for this. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any other audience comments for this item? All right, seeing none, I'd move to Planning Commission discussion.
I'll speak first, since I brought up infill earlier. I think anytime we have these infill projects, we should take a careful look out of respect for the neighbors and the neighborhoods, and also out of respect for the whole city. As one of the comments was made, we do have a supply issue. I used to live at 448 Elm, so I understand the nature of the neighborhood. I think this looks like a great project. I love the split-use driveway that also fits with the neighborhood. I have a friend 2 blocks from here. He has a split driveway also. I think it looks like a great project and a great example of good infill development.
Thank you. Any other Planning Commission discussion?
I'll just echo a little bit of what Commissioner Jablonski said. The applicant made a comment that as is, you could essentially build whatever you want on this lot, which would be very likely if you built to a maximum square footage on this lot, it would be out of character with the neighborhood. We have a couple examples of that in this neighborhood, live 3 blocks over, that did maximize their square footage on an 80-foot lot, and so the fact that we're splitting a lot here, and while you could still argue you're getting close to maximizing your square footage, it's on a 37-foot lot, you're just inherently more limited, and you're adding more supplies, as Jablonski said, as far as adding 2 units as opposed to 1, and so I like the project. I think it's a nice design. I also think about what the alternative could be, and it could be a little bit of a scarier alternative in many ways as to what could be built if you were not to split the lot. So, I do want to comment. There obviously it's been confirmed that there was a meeting with the neighborhood. I was one who received that email that I think went out to over 190 people in the neighborhood. Basically, spent the last 8 years collecting email addresses, just informally through the Chautauqua Neighborhood Association to gather as much contact with neighbors in our neighborhood, and the email went out basically as an invite, stating that while there's no pre-development meeting, this was an opportunity for the neighbors to meet with the applicant's architect and provide comments, and as has been stated, concessions were made, which is remarkable and doesn't happen too often, so that should be commended and encouraged for any future projects as well. So good job there, and yeah, so that's my comment.
I had a few observations I was going to share as well, specifically a design with the shared driveway in historic neighborhoods. We had a publication that went out by the city, I think it was in the early 2000s, as to explain the nature of historic neighborhoods, and shared driveways being common was one of those items. We've had a few PUDs recently that have had some similar shared driveways, and just seeing that as a way that when we express a lot of concerns about impervious area, there's always long-standing, how do those get maintained and worked out between neighboring, relations if those parcels are split. But those can be very eloquent solutions. I thought the design was thoughtful, and the only comment I really had was would love to have maybe seen more of the parking instead of in the middle, maybe behind those garages, so that what you saw driving by would be maybe a landscape feature instead of cars from the driveway, since there was an intent to move those cars back. But I don't know that that would be anything I would make a requisite of the project. I think the project is strong on its own. It was just an observation I had. I always enjoy to see when an applicant is working with their neighbors. I appreciate that there wasn't a pre-development meeting, but they essentially put one together on their own there are many projects in certain neighborhoods that need special attention and need neighbor input, whether required or not, and I think they recognize that, and I want to show my appreciation for working with them. We've had some other standout applicants before that have done some of these changes. Norman Regional, I know, and some of their plans have made some drastic changes before, as one example. So this is a great example of how to effectively work with your neighbors and not against your neighbors. I am excited to see, we don't often have a lot of comments coming to support and say nice things about the applicant from the neighbors, and I think that's just worth noting and commending. So, okay. If there's no other discussion, I would take a motion regarding this item.
Move to approve.
Second.
And a vote?
You may vote. And the motion carried 8-0.
Moving to item number 5, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-30. Tom S. and Mary Kate Aldridge Charitable and Educational Trust request rezone FBC detached frontage to CCPUD Center City Planned Unit Development for 7,000 square feet of property located at 321 West Comanche Street. Before we take our staff presentation, I did want to note that we did receive the updated narrative, and specifically, the staff is going to present to that. We will ask that the applicant confirms that that's what their intent is for the document, and then when the motion goes to the floor as a point of order for our team here on Planning Commission, the motion will need to include as amended on the floor. So just a note for us on commission that that motion will need to say as amended. Saying that, I would take the staff presentation.
Good evening, Anna E. Starr at the Planning Department. This is the request for rezoning from a Center City form-based code detached frontage to Center City Planned Unit Development for 321 Comanche Street. This is the subject tract here on the existing zoning map. This subject tract, as well as the surrounding tracts, are all part of the Center City form-based code. This is the existing land use showing this tract is vacant. To the north is a law office and parking lot that fronts onto Main Street. To the west is single-family homes, and to the south is a single-family home, and then to the east is a vacant parcel. The existing Norman 2025 plan shows this designated for low-density residential. This is a 7,000 square foot lot. And here is the parcel looking north towards the subject tract, and then looking east down Comanche Street, looking west down Comanche, and then south across Comanche. And then this is from the alleyway looking north into that parking lot and law office, and then looking east down the alley, and looking west down the alley, and then south towards the parcel, the subject tract parcel. This proposed rezoning is wishing to develop this parcel for a two-family dwelling in the form of a duplex with a maximum allowed bedroom count of 3. The two-story structure will be at grade in order to provide accessibility to the first floor, which will contain a living room, a kitchen, and a bed and a bathroom. 2 bedrooms and bathrooms will be located on the second floor. Each dwelling unit will have an attached garage on the rear of the structure with driveways from the alleyway. And then to retain the existing green space in the front, they wish to provide that as the outdoor living space. They're proposing a required build line be placed at 30 feet behind the property line. and allow the open space to be in front of the structure. As mentioned, the applicant will be, has requested to revise this to a maximum of 65%, which you guys received earlier this evening. Excuse me. And the particulars of this PUD include, they're able to meet most of the requirements, but however, due to their desire to construct a duplex, retain the front yard green space, and allow for accessibility, they're requesting the following modifications to this inner-city form-based code. Allow for residential duplex, allow the required build line along Comanche Street at 30 feet behind the front property line. As mentioned, allow the open space as illustrated on the site development plan to be in front of the required build line and the parking setback line. Allow the finished floor grade, elevation to be at grade. And as I mentioned, the request for 0.5% over impervious surface is being revised, so they will not be requesting that. Okay, and then pre-development, excuse me, pre-development Greenbelt and Park Board were not required for this request. And it should be noted that Public Works will require drainage calculations at the time of building permit, as well as an installation of a 6-foot public sidewalk at construction time. And the existing service lines must be abandoned at the main. We did not receive any protest on this request. And staff forwards this request and ordinance number 2324-30 to the Planning Commission for consideration and recommendation to the City Council. I think I missed a slide. Yes, and they did provide elevation drawings here as well. And with that, I would take any questions that the commission might have.
Thank you. Any questions by commission of staff?
Since it is a PUD, just to be clear, the existing trees in the front are proposed to be left as is that right?
I do not know that that was addressed in.
The drawing says tree, but I didn't know if that was cut down what's there and just
Well,
swap in a new one.
I think they are having to put trees in as part of, in the center city, you're required to put street trees in, so I think they were going to try to comply with that. So I don't know that the trees are going to remain or not. I think the applicant is here and they can answer that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff? Maybe you can just be the sounding board for the question that I asked in advance. One of the questions I had was, what was exactly the required building line already? And I did get an answer to that, and we are in a unique part of form-based code that in the Planning Commission we haven't really seen a lot of or at all yet since form-based code has been passed in this detached area. So from my understanding, the required building line in detached fluctuates, and it's wherever the neighboring houses are.
Correct.
I did not ask specifically how much was measured, but I did use the city's measurement tool on the GIS. Pro tip, on the zoning map, there is a measurement tool, and it looked like the house to the east was about at a 50-foot setback currently from the street. So maybe if you know what that setback is to confirm, or if it looked to be.
It should be 25 from the front property line, but are you measuring from the curb?
I did measure to the street, so there could be additional easement that isn't part of that property line too. Yeah. 25 to that. Okay, so our property line, if anybody had seen that aerial, is likely going to be closer to that sidewalk. It looks like not necessarily to the street. Sometimes we see that, for example, when there's an easement that allows for multiple lane roads that just haven't been built that way yet. So that was helpful to know too, because I was trying to understand what is 30 compared to what we have now. Also, there are houses that aren't facing Comanche, they're facing University to the west. And this might be a question, I didn't ask this in advance, so I apologize. Are the side setbacks there that are facing Comanche part of an acceptable setback for the frontage for this house. And I didn't really know for sure, and, was kind of curious about that.
I'm not sure. We would probably have to dig on that question to know a sure answer about that. I'm not sure. Because typically, I think the intent was typically in a single-family neighborhood, it is 25 foot. So they were kind of thinking you should match what's seen.
So do you happen to know how with the houses that are to the west, that are front-facing to University, what their side setback
It was like
compared to
10
Comanche
feet.
is?
It's like 10 feet, maybe.
Okay, thanks. That just
Yeah,
for a
if
point
that.
of
It might
context.
even be closer, because remember, those are historic houses. So I'm not even sure if they're that. I think they're like 8 foot back, so,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, that is very helpful. I was trying to understand, and I think with the measurement tool, I was going from the street, so that helps kind of understand. So these would probably be further back than the houses to the west facing University, and a little further back than to the house that is skip a lot over. Is that just?
Yeah, it'll be further back
Okay.
than the duplex that's to the east. It'll be further back than that one.
Thank you for clarifying. Normally, we have a set number, but since these are based on neighboring properties in this particular area, that was questions I had to know what's changing. So, thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Thank you. And the applicant is here.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll take the applicant presentation.
And are you just going to use these?
I think I'm good. I mean, honestly, I think where we need to be is what Anise has done, which is, it's a very simple application. My name is Jake Aldrich. We're looking at Comanche Street. I think the question you asked is pertinent, which is, what are we going to do with the trees? We're going to leave them. It's a street that is unlike anything else in Norman. It's a street that has an alleyway behind it. It is the only place in Norman, literally, that has 5 or 6 houses or 5 or 6 plots on it that are available to Main Street, alleyway, land. And so how do we take the center city and how do we move it forward? My law office is at 324 West Main. My family's foundation is at 324 West Main. The Tom S. and Mary Kate Aldridge Charitable and Educational Trust. That's who owns the building that my law office is in. That's the Charitable and Educational Foundation that is going to build what we're doing moving forward. My sincere hope is that that's a place that we can bring my family who does not live here to Norman to have a place here so that when we have our meetings, we're not having to rent. My family is coming in this weekend for the Cavett Kids Charity Foundation dinner. We're renting a home right next door to Roosevelt Elementary School. I would prefer for our family to have this place be that place where my family can be. It's incredibly frustrating to me as a business owner in Norman with a family that only wants to do good by Norman. God's honest truth is to have to be here to ask permission to do something that is what is the intent of this community. I'm sorry that I'm frustrated by this, and I'm sorry that I've had to go through this process. And Anise has been awesome. Jane has been awesome. The city has been awesome helping me through this process. I'm an attorney, but I'm not a land use attorney. I do not know how a person that is not an attorney gets this done. I don't know how they make it happen. And I think that is something that we have to talk about. So I respect the process more than anybody. I respect everything that she has done to be here, but this is an opportunity for me to express to you my displeasure with the process. It's not fair. And I don't know how anybody who's not me can do this, honestly. So if there are questions for me, I'll answer anything. I'm sorry to go there, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Are there questions for the applicant?
So I do have a question.
Sure.
I appreciate the comments on the process and the issues that you faced. But I do have to question, there is an existing code in place to allow for the construction of a residential property that you can build 2 units with an accessory dwelling unit that's limited to 650 square feet, but you can have 2 units on that property. And so my question is, why was that not an option?
So the name of my law firm is Aldridge Teasdale. I'm Aldridge. My partner wants to live behind our law firm. So I've already pre-leased that 1 unit to my partner. The other option is my family, who comes here multiple times a year, having a place where we have our foundation meetings is in the Tom S. and Mary Kate Aldridge conference room in my law firm. The Robert S. Aldridge chairman's office is in my law firm. That is where our family, God's honest truth, it's where the urns of my grandfather, my grandmother are located. It is a place that is our home. It's what we do. So the answer to the question is, I want them to be close. And I want them to have a place close to home. And so instead of doing that, I have an option to do one thing, which is I can make that happen as it is under its current code. That's not going to solve both problems. But if I rezone it the way that I want to, pre-leased, 1 to my business partner, Teasdale, David Teasdale, he'll have 1, and the other one will be for my family. Does that make, I hope that makes sense.
If maybe I could ask further, kind of getting to the point, the question, I guess, and maybe my continued concern is the ADU, you have an opportunity for an ADU, so maybe can you speak a little bit to your size use or why ADU, a 2-unit with an ADU didn't make sense? I understand your intended use and who would be the occupants, but tell me more about the square footage. What made this design versus something that you could have done by code? Can you maybe speak to that?
Absolutely. We could have built a home according to code with the 650 square foot detached garage. We went through meetings with city council, and the long and the short of it is that doesn't meet the purpose. The purpose is giving my partner a place to live and also providing my father, who lives in Pittscomb, Florida, a place to come back to. A single family unit, that's fantastic. The problem is, as a city, and I heard people talk earlier about the need for residential opportunities for people that are not 4-bedroom, not 5-bedroom, not 3-bedroom. We're talking about what is an option for people. Well, I have it pre-leased, but there are 2 lots right next door to me, and I believe that they're going to do the same and ask permission to do the same at some point moving forward. The idea that I think would be impactful would be, let's give that, because that is the center city to what we have on campus. How do we move from center city to that? We provide a little bit more density. We give a little bit more opportunity. And so the only way that I can think to do that is I can build the same dadgum house that's right next door to me, and that doesn't make it any better for anybody else. I can do that. I wouldn't have to ask for permission to do it. I could do that. But that doesn't make any sense, because that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is we don't have enough in our core housing, opportunities for housing. And I think what that development phase was, and the reason I have to ask for permission to do this, is because I'm in that little area that requires something different. Well, let's do it. Let's be a little bit different.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Then moving on to our audience comments, are there any audience members for comments on this item? And I know you said it before, please say your name and address one more time when you come up. No problem.
Jane Crumpley, 423 Elm. I was interested in, it will probably annoy the applicant, and I don't mean to do that, but when you buy property, you need to know what is allowed or not allowed, in the area, and what the process has to be if you ask for an exemption to some of those. But I was very interested in the 2 trees in the front. I drove by the property. They're incredible. Planting along the right-of-way will take years for those. So I was curious as to whether they're going to be retained. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. We'll call you up if we have any additional questions.
I will save the trees.
Thank you. We'll call you up if we have additional questions. We appreciate it. All right, and then any other audience comments? Will you come up and go ahead and just speak? It will be a one-way dialogue, however, we may discuss following. So, yeah, go ahead and. Yep, just go ahead, come up, say your name and address one more time.
Rick Pendergraft, 421 West Eufaula.
Thank you.
Is the proposal to change it to a duplex from what it currently is? I was trying to understand.
Do you have any other comments you want to make about the project? I could say yes.
Again, I think it comes back to, I feel like that this part of Norman, it has a high level of density already. And by adding more properties like this, it just increases that. And we currently don't have the infrastructure to support that that's in this part of town. Maybe that's a separate conversation, but I think it goes back to increasing the density around this, similar to the project before.
Thank you. Any other audience comments? Okay, seeing none, I would move to Planning Commission discussion. I do have a lot of items on here. I'm going to probably let everyone else go first and then see if I duplicate from there. So,
Go ahead.
all right, I did an extensive amount of research for this project, and I wanted to share some of my findings accordingly. I have put literally hours into researching this, so maybe some of that might be helpful to share. Well, obviously, you could tell from the build line, I had a lot of what is actually being changed, and glad that we got that clarified on there too. We have also, I mean, something that came up was the original narrative was a 65.5% impervious area, which was so close. And as soon as I asked why, they were willing to change it to 65%, which I think that's very meaningful. That is back into what the code is. It was a small change, you know, and that reasonability. I liked a lot of things with this project. So, for example, keeping the trees in the front. That was also parking in the back. There is a finished grade for accessibility. I do wish this project had a pre-development meeting. I understand it was not required. The staff sets these agendas. From what I understand, applicants can request them, but it's not required. I don't really think that that should necessarily be held against the applicant. It is not required. I do always like to see more participation with neighbors with that, and maybe not necessarily a derogatory comment about this project, more just another opportunity to recognize the other project that we had that did that. So I do think that opportunities for pre-development when you've got specific neighborhoods in here is pretty important. I did delve pretty deep into the actual code for form-based code in my fancy binder that I have it printed out on. This particular area is the first PUD for this type of zoning to my knowledge. It's a detached BFS frontage represented by the traditional one-dwelling structure with small front, side, and rear yards along a tree-lined street. We have trees here. Structures are 1 to 2 story in height with pitched roof and front porches. Its purpose is to protect the character of single-family neighborhoods. So I think we've got a little bit of a conflict with the zoning that's in there, obviously saying the intent is to protect single-family neighborhoods. I reached out to people that worked on form-based code. I did not, for disclosure, to understand what was going on with the intent when this was passed, because the form-based code isn't that old. Why did we do this? Why? What was going on? And from what I understand, a lot of neighbors came and spoke very avidly about protecting the character of their single-family home neighborhoods. So I think that's really important to recognize that a lot of people spent years and work and a lot of comment, I mean hours and hours of comment, to put the form-based code in place for the way that it is. The form-based code for this does also allow for an uptick in density because you are allowed in your use on all stories, only residential uses are permitted, 1 dwelling unit or 1 dwelling unit with an accessory unit allowed. Looking up the definition of accessory unit, that's where you have those square footage requirements that Commissioner Brewer mentioned previously. And in the language, it does appear that it can be attached or detached. So it could be an attached ADU. I know plenty of examples within neighborhoods like this that are like that. Did extensive research into what's actually going on this block also. This particular block, not just in all of this light yellow detached area. I'm sorry, I'm looking this way a lot. I can look this way, I can look this way. Looking at the detached neighborhoods around here, we have the vacant lot, and I really appreciate the forwardness of saying we know that owner wants to also do this same thing with a duplex. That actually doesn't feel like a bait and switch if somebody is up forward about that. The next house over is a single-family home. The following house is a duplex in some pretty severe disrepair. No offense, just in some disrepair. You also have across the street, the house actually does appear to have an ADU across the street. So we looked into the alley. There's a small white unit, and 2 units are listed on the assessor's page. Anais, I saw you shaking your head. So I looked into that. The assessor's page does show 2 units. Both are, according to the assessor, which may not be accurate data, from 1940. So there are ADUs around here. So I think there is an opportunity for density on this particular block. Other things that I think are really unique about this particular stretch of Comanche. You have a lot of parking lots. The corner house to the southeast of that intersection appears to be some sort of an apartment type use multi-unit. it's a big white house, but it appears to be probably used like an apartment. You also have the church taking up a pretty large portion of this part of Comanche. So there's actually not very many houses, even if you added houses to these vacant lots, actually on this one block of Comanche. Kind of taking a lot of this into consideration, also really looked into the mapping of form-based code. Where did detached start? Where did these other uses end? So, and I don't know if we can maybe look at a picture of the map that might help illustrate, but I looked at the parallel streets. Where did detached start? Where did urban general and other uses start? And on most of the other parallel streets, at this same point, this would have not been detached. This would have actually, the detached usually starts just a little bit in to just past University. Basically, the house is facing University, but maybe not further into Comanche on the other streets. However, also 2 parallel streets over, you also have a neighborhood that half the street is detached on one part of the intersection and the other half isn't. I think there's a lot of intent to this mapping. I was really hoping somebody who lived across the street might come and tell us what they said, or somebody who was involved in form-based code as to the mapping that particular block, because there's a lot of intent that goes into this to just throw this out. We do have some opportunities for growth in here. So I feel very torn on this particular decision for a lot of reasons, because if I am looking at this individual project on this individual street, I see a lot of appropriateness. I see a lot of things that fit and make sense for this street. At the same time, I am very concerned about precedents that this sets as the first PUD that would be done in a detached. We already know there's an intent to do another one right next to it, so deciding this, we're deciding the decision of that. I think it's very important to note that this would not be a precedent that other areas in detached, however this vote goes and how anybody decides, I think to put this on record, this is not a precedent of what I would be willing to vote on in Planning Commission anywhere in detached, because there is an intent for those to stay as a single family in nature. Anyway, I'm happy to discuss further, but I also kind of did not like that that was very duplex in appearance from the street view. I think that to keep with the single-family character, this also could have also been a duplex that was a less obvious duplex. But there was a lot that I really kind of researched in and have weighed in for that. So I will let somebody else add if there is anything left to add. I would love to hear.
Can I ask clarification? Because I'm looking at the updated drawing, and granted, it's a little grainy, but it does not appear to be detached to me on this.
And I can tell you, the detached, that comment that I made had to do with, that has to do with ADUs in the code, not this project, for a point of clarification.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies. I was like, wait a minute. Okay.
So this is a single building,
Yes.
all attached.
I appreciate the commissioner's comments. One of the great things about a PUD is that you're locking in the zoning. And I like the green space that's locked in. I like the accessibility that's locked in. I like the design for accessibility of keeping it low elevation. I agree that, there's a question of appropriateness for a duplex. There is a duplex on that road. My kids grew up going to the First Baptist after school, right on that same block across the street. I'm friends with the guy who's just to the west of this property. That property has a shared driveway. And so there is an aspect of sharedness in the neighborhood. As you pointed out, southwest of that, on the southwest corner of that intersection is a large white property that has a lot of, I don't know how it's zoned, but I don't think it's just a single family home. So there are examples of sharedness in this neighborhood. There is a duplex a couple properties down. I don't think it would be breaking in the style of the community to have a duplex there. And as you pointed out, there are no neighbors here who can speak to it, which, it would be nice if neighbors were here to speak to it. So that's all I have to say.
And recognize we did have neighbors that speak. Thank you. We did hear you. Thank you.
Sorry, neighbors right on, across the street, sorry.
And Jane did just clarify for me, what I was under the impression was a single-family home is actually also a duplex. So to the east is 2 duplexes before the parking lot. So, yeah.
The comments I'm going to make, primarily to, I'm called defending the process of how we got here. This was a 3.5-year process to get the form-based code adopted. There was no more discussion in any area in the form-based code than in the detached frontage in the yellow. And the boundaries were drawn for a reason. There were 2 ad hoc committees following that process. One, I believe, 3 years after, and then one about 1.5 years after that. There was no further discussion in that area as to what we wanted to do, any changes, because it was kind of understood that essentially the form-based code boundary was drawn, and as the process went on, the ad hoc committee at the time realized that there was an area of this form-based code that didn't make sense to be drawn into a form-based code. And that's ultimately what led to these specific streets being drawn into this area. Now, one allowance was made in that, and that was in recognition of the existing character of the neighborhood, and that was the inclusion of ADUs. And so that's where I am really struggling with the idea of doing what you want, when what you want is essentially already there. It just may not be exactly what you want as far as the size of the property. And so there's an allowance here, again, to build a house with an ADU. I think it's actually it would be a great precedent-setting example of building an ADU in an area that we could see a lot more of that. And so, again, back to defending the process, we got to this with a lot of purpose, with a lot of discussion, with a lot of neighborhood input. We talk about neighbors being involved. There was a reason this was drawn in, and I also think that it's important to note that when the form-based code was adopted, there's a different property owner, and that could go both ways with kind of how you would view this, but the current property owner knew what they're getting into. If they didn't, it was kind of, that's part of doing your due diligence when you're buying a property. So I have a major concern with, I do have a major concern with setting a precedent. I know we are technically supposed to look at properties on a case-by-case basis. That's, history has proven that as time goes on, there's always reference back to a property, says they did this, they did that, why can't I do that? And that's influential. As a property precedent is adopted, that influence is permanent, and I think that by setting that precedent, that will present major concerns to all of the property owners in this yellow area who went through this process to make sure that their homes were protected from being redeveloped into something that was outside of their desire. So that's my primary concern, and it's not just primary; it's major concern, and that's that's why I will not be able to support this rezoning due to the fact that so much input was put into protecting this area.
Can I ask Sorry, is it possible to have the staff answer a question? If a duplex counts as a single-family home, what's the delta we're talking about here? What's the difference between this PUD and the city center form-based code?
So in this particular case, in the center city, it allowed specifically for either a single-family home or a single-family home and an accessory dwelling unit as defined in the center city form-based codes, which it has its own definition. So a duplex does not meet that definition because it's an attached single structure. So, yeah.
I guess I was confused on the earlier comment.
I'm going to go ahead and read the definition for accessory dwelling unit. I really appreciate having the code printed. Highly recommend it. Accessory unit, a building or addition for living purposes, maximum footprint of 650 square feet, or the footprint of the main structure for English basement type accessory units that is not the primary structure or principal dwelling unit on a lot that can be used as an additional residential or home occupation space. So essentially a unit that is accessory in nature, not the primary nature of the unit.
Yeah.
I don't know if that helps.
That actually does help a lot because it sounded like they're wanting it to be a dwelling unit when they are in town regularly. I have a very involved family, and I'm one of 5. 650 square feet would not be adequate meeting space. I mean, the older that we get, the more a little bit of privacy is very greatly valued. I really appreciate everything that you said, giving the history, Commissioner Brewer. And yet, in light of that, I do also appreciate the process. I know you found it frustrating, but the process is affording you to be able to ask for the variance, to say, hey, there's this need, and we're taking a thoughtful approach. We're keeping the beautiful trees. We are not going to be an eyesore to the property, and it's in keeping with at least 2 other structures on the street. I feel like you're doing exactly what you should, which is, hey, the form-based code does not perfectly give us what we want, but based on the proximity to their office, nothing would. So yes, he did know what he was getting into, but he knew that there would be a process, and he's doing the process. And so I do appreciate that. I do like the design. I do like your thoughtfulness. And I do understand with wanting to have a place to live and not just a meeting space, because then otherwise you're looking at still renting a VRBO just to meet in an ADU next to the property that your partner would be living in. So I do understand. I think that may not have been perfectly spelled out, but I think I do understand, so.
I somehow missed something too that I was going to say too, in talking about the process, and not that I don't disagree that these processes can be very frustrating, a lot of meetings, a lot for citizens to even understand. How many times every meeting do I say, this is what the process is, so that regular people know what to expect that will happen after this. I wanted to talk a little bit about form-based code since it is so recent in comparison to our current code, which is about 70 years old. We do a lot of PUDs in Norman. It's kind of a question of, to build anything, do you have to have a PUD? When you have a PUD, you have the opportunity to write your own code, and also it gives us the opportunity to look case by case at each item for appropriateness. That is a double-edged sword. It is great to be able to pick and choose everything that gets built. It also makes it very challenging for someone to be able to build because there's that added process every time. That's more of a comment towards the entire zoning process and more legacy code, which we are also very excitingly actively working to change and update. Thank you very much to all of our staff that help us day in and day out to help these things happen and accomplish this and all the many volunteers and community members that have been working towards those goals. There is also with this form-based code, this was our first example of changing zoning that we've done, and it's only, I mean, relatively pretty recent, I mean, to less than 10 years-ish old. And it was, we talk about this a lot, it was intended to be a living document that gets updated and changed, because it was also designed to not get stale 70 years later, but to be able to accommodate and grow. Also, I want to respect, though, like, how else would somebody have changed this and gotten this to work in form-based code if they wanted to build something like this besides a PUD? And that would involve changing the code and changing the mapping and doing something else for their street. Like, if this street really wasn't, a couple years later, supposed to be detached in that zoning code, that there is ad hoc committees, just good information to throw out there. There's an ad hoc committee for changes to form-based code, but that is also a pretty lengthy process. So, you know, if this was an appropriate change for this whole street, we're either saying, hey, all of you that want to change to this that we think is appropriate, you have to PUD each time, or we need to make a change to the code for right there. And I think remembering form-based code was intended to be able to be updated if appropriateness had. And that would be the alternative that the applicant would have had to get this done. And also not necessarily an easy or short process. That was all. That was a comment I had. I'm really done.
Okay, I'm going to chime in. I think this is a really tough one. I understand the challenges of having a need that doesn't quite conform to the code as it's written. I would have concerns in that this is the first time we are seeing a project come before commission that deals specifically with this yellow zone, single-family detached. I know there was a very lengthy process, and if I am understanding correctly, and please someone correct me if I do not have this right, the homeowners felt strongly enough about these areas to downzone from their own R3 at the time to R1 to try to protect the character of the neighborhood. That to me says a lot, and if this is our first time to look at a project in this zone, I feel like we are going to set a precedent, and that's a very big concern that I have. It is hard to balance the needs of everyone, and someone is inevitably going to feel like they didn't get what they wanted here. And I think, you know, that's the question in front of commission tonight, is to try to figure out, you know, how do we balance that? You are asking for a permanent zoning change, and that is contraindicated with the city center form-based code. So I appreciate the dilemma of your needs and space and trying to balance that with the long years of hard work that went in to request what was ultimately accepted as our city center form-based code. So this is a tough one.
Jane is also going to clarify what the historic zone is for us too, so. I get whispers sometimes. I just put them out on the microphone when I do. Are there any other commission discussions while waiting for that finding? Also, I would use this as an opportunity to remind our commissioners that the motion does need to include as amended on the floor when we are to a point of making a motion.
What's the property width? I'm trying to look at this. I can't tell.
50 feet?
50 feet.
Thanks. It fits the street.
Also, we'll take another moment to thank all of our audience members that come out. We appreciate that you guys all have lives and agenda items too, and thank you for showing up to be here and making your comments, and we do really listen and pay attention and take those into consideration. So, thank you for that. The legacy zoning on this was R3 previously, so.
Okay, so they did downgrade. Yes. Down zone. Okay.
So that would be a down zone to go to a single family here.
Well, you know, while we're waiting, we should fill the air with something. I don't know, I mean, this almost feels like NIMBYism, to go from R3 down to R1 while the city's saying, well, we need infill development. You know, so it almost sounds like we need infill development, but not in my neighborhood. In my neighborhood, we need to lock in that it's gonna look like it always has. And if we need more houses in this city, are duplexes a good way to do it? There are already duplexes on the street. It doesn't seem to break with the character of the area. And so I do appreciate the form-based code. I think form-based code is good. But to some of the points raised, does the form-based code really fit right here? It's not clear to me that it does.
Just as a confirmation of that idea, that was also why ADUs were included in this area. ADUs are not only an additional unit, but an affordable unit, which we are lacking in this area. 650 square foot unit may not be exactly what the applicant needs, but it is a unit that is inherently affordable just based on its size, just, you know, the fact that it's, you know, typically a house is rented based on its total square footage, which is not allowed in other areas west of there in the similar neighborhood. ADUs are not allowed. So this is still increasing density. It's not to R3. I think the intent of the R3 to R1 was to effectively combat what I'll call historical mini-dorm prior to form-based code being adopted, which there's multiple examples of that. This design is more in style with that, frankly, with the setback. And so I think that's yet another reason that this is a precedent that seems to be going in the wrong direction relative to what form-based code was trying to achieve at the time. But again, back to the point, it's still, you have the option to build 2 units, and I just want to make sure that that's not entirely lost in the conversation, that that is a possibility.
Sorry, I'll ask one more question. Can we see the square footage? Is it clear what the square footage of each side of the duplex is?
I think they were just under 2,000 square feet, like 1958,
Can you clarify that for us for the applicant?
1935.
I think it's incredibly important to articulate the fact that this lot in and of itself is 50 feet, side to side. So I appreciate what you're saying about the ADU. It's a fantastic thought. But that is not what this would work as. Because unlike every other ADU in that entire neighborhood, there's an alleyway. This is an alleyway. There is no other alleyway neighborhood anywhere in Norman.
Applicant, could we maybe stick to answering the question about the square footage?
But sure, got it. 50 square feet side to side.
And the square footage of the housing unit, please.
4,000 square feet under roof. 1935 each. But
Thank you.
incredibly important.
Thank you.
A lot of mischaracterization.
Just a
So just
question, because it's kind of came up earlier with the previous one. You could build whatever monstrosity of a house you want on a lot. Could you build a 4,000 square foot house on this lot? I'm just wondering if instead of a duplex, you could just rip the middle right out of it and build a
We might have to
single
do some math.
4,000 square foot house. I just want to try and understand, like, again, the differential, like how far off is this from what you could actually do according to the form-based code?
The setbacks are all met on all the sides, so yes, you could.
so
If you could, and you had one doorway in front, and then two doors once you go inside, which you used to see this actually in old buildings. Would this then satisfy the form-based code?
There are some examples of two-family homes on historic Chautauqua that were like exact duplicates of themselves in more of a pub style where you go in a front door, then there's a staircase and your other unit is on the second floor. So I know of a specific house on Chautauqua and that is zoned R2 as a two-family home, which is also what a duplex fits into. So there are some examples of that in Norman. It's not as common. I would love to see maybe more examples like that as an architectural choice, but it's not my money to hire the architect, so. Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Jane pointed out they can go up to 85% of impervious coverage with drainage, with the drainage report. So that's for the size of lot, that'd be a pretty large potential dwelling structure. And technically, I think the setback would bring it more forward too for that.
You would lose trees.
Are we still filling time while we're waiting?
No, we're not. We're
Okay.
not. Is there,
I
is there
have no
any
more
other
comments.
discussion? Any other discussion? And if there's not any other discussion, I would take a motion as amended. Or otherwise, but I'd take a motion. It'd be helpful if it was as amended.
I move to approve as amended.
And a vote?
You may vote.
Okay.
Everyone has voted, and the motion carried 6-2.
I'm going to move on to item number 6, and then following this, I'd like to take a break for a restroom, if that sounds good for everyone. Okay. So item number 6, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance 2324-31, Doyle's Electric request rezoning from CCFBC Urban General Frontage to CCPUD Center City Planned Unit Development for property located at 122 West Comanche Street. Take the applicant presentation.
Staff presentation? Oh, staff presentation?
I'm sorry,
Oh,
yes, staff presentation. Thank you.
Yes. Excuse me. Anna E. Starr with the Planning Department. This is a request from Doyle's Electric to rezone from a Center City form-based code to Center City Planned Unit Development. Here is the subject tract on the existing zoning. It is surrounded by Center City form-based code. Here's the subject tract on the existing land use. Currently, there is a one-story cinder block building on the west half of the lot, and on the east half, it is vacant, but it is utilized for the service vehicles for the business. I'm sorry, let me go back. And to the north of this is an electric substation, and to the west is the church parking lot. To the south is the county parking lot, and to the east is an existing commercial retail business. This is the existing Norman 2025 plan. This is designated commercial. Here is a view of the Doyle's Electric from the front, looking south. Here's looking east, down Comanche Street. And this is north towards the substation. And then back west, down Comanche Street. This is in the alleyway looking north between the existing cinder block building and the business to the east. And here's looking east down the alleyway, and here is looking south into the county parking lot. This is a request for a CCPUD, and the proposal is to demolish a portion of the existing building that has deteriorated over the years while retaining the rear portion of the cinder block structure to utilize for service materials of the existing business. And that open space that will be in front of the existing building will be utilized as open space or parking. And the applicant would also like to utilize the rooftop of the existing cinder block building, and then construct a new structure on the east half of this parcel. And that new structure, he would like to keep it in line with the existing buildings on that street. So that would require him to request through this CCPUD to move that required build line. And so the particulars of this CCPUD, sorry. Again, because they're able to meet many of the aspects of the Center City Form-Based Code, but because they would like to retain the non-conforming structure that is there and create the parking in front of the existing building and build a new structure on the other side to the property line on the front, they are requesting modifications to the Center City Form-Based Code as follows. Again, that's to move the required build line along Comanche Street from 10 feet behind the property line to the property line. Eliminate the parking setback line. The applicant will be providing a steel-framed gate across the west side of the property to secure that open space. And then allow open space to be provided on the roof deck of the existing building and in the area in front of the existing building, and also allow the retention of that single-story structure. And then finally, they would like to be allowed to place a canopy sign on the front of the building as shown in the elevation elevation drawings that were submitted. And there was not a requirement for a pre-development meeting. Ooh. Wow, really far back. Sorry. Oops, no. There was not a requirement for a pre-development meeting or a greenbelt or park board. Public Works did not have any comments on this. Utilities did comment that the existing meters would need to be abandoned at the time of the building permit. There was not any protest on this particular request. And with that, staff forwards this request and ordinance number 23-2431 to Planning Commission for consideration and recommendation to City Council. And with that, I'd take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions by commission of staff?
And there is an applicant here with presentation as well.
I did have a question. What is the width of the lot?
It's 50 feet.
50 feet, that's total, including,
Mm-hmm.
okay. And do you know like the, I don't know what you call it, separated width between the new building and then the other?
I do not have that off the top of my head.
That might be an
The
applicant
applicant
question,
representative might be able to answer that.
Am I understanding correctly that this new building butts right up against Copeland's?
That would be correct.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, I take the applicant presentation. Hope you enjoy being on the other side, Mr. Peacock.
It's always a fresh change. So good evening, Commissioners. Matt Peacock here, owner and principal architect for Peacock Design, here representing Doyle's Electric, which you have in the crowd. Ms. Starr did a great job kind of highlighting the high notes of the project, but Doyle's is a longtime downtown Norman business owner, started in 1964. They're looking to grow their operations and invest in the next 60 years of downtown Norman. As you see on the screen, sorry, I'm going the wrong direction. I thought I knew how to drive this. That's the existing street view, which she showed you already. Here's a couple side-by-sides showing the existing and proposed. You can see that on the left, the orange is the existing building, the yellow is the existing parking. We are essentially proposing to flip those, putting the building in the vacant spot and the parking on the west side of the lot. As Ms. Starr outlined, we are seeking a variance to the RBL because it's currently 11 feet behind the property line and all of the historic buildings are built to the property line. We'd like to match those historic buildings. We would like to Doyle's to be able to continue parking their vehicles in a secure space in front of their building, and that's why we're trying to do that in front of the old building. And as Ms. Starr alluded to, the one-story portion would now be a non-conforming use. And so to retain that as a storage of vehicles and material, we included that as well in the CCPUD. So here's a close-up. You can see at the front of the property, there is a masonry wing wall with a steel gate that secures the parking from the street. It also creates that continuous street wall across the front of the property. Here are the floor plans. First floor, double height open showroom in the front, staircase, and then it's got a series of offices, conference room, and then two-story storage in the back. So as I said, the reason we're here tonight is to try to get a variance on the RBL, the parking setback, and the one-story use. Let's see here. Here is the final rendering of what it would like. You can see the gate here on the right side, the two-story building. It matches the clear height requirements. It matches all of the fenestration requirements, basically every requirement in Center City except for the three that we outlined. So I'm here to answer any questions. We look forward to hearing your comments and hopefully your support. Like I said, the team is here if you want to talk to any of them as well.
All right, any questions of the applicant by commission?
Same question I had earlier. What's the width of the new building being proposed?
So it's actually kind of odd. The old building was built at 27 feet and the new one's 23. It's a 50-foot lot, and somehow in history there was, instead of being two 25-foot buildings, I'm not really sure how that happened or when it happened, but that's the condition we're working with. So 23 feet.
Then on the warehouse building, is there, I see a railing over the top? Is that, I mean, essentially going to be like a rooftop?
Yeah, they want to use that as an occupied roof deck so that in theory, that open space, which is parking most of the time, could also be used as sort of an event space. You open the gates up, you're able to have people on the roof deck, people out in the open space. So it kind of creates a little place-making opportunity as well, in addition to being parking.
Any other questions of the applicant by commission? You want to address any concerns as far as egress from those gates and safety for pedestrians walking by?
So they do swing in, so you don't ever have to worry about them swinging out over the right-of-way. And as in terms of egress, there's actually an overhead door on the front and back of that, or there will be an overhead door on the front and back of that storage building.
And so from my understanding, the intent is to mainly use it as ingress. You would basically be driving into this lot. So, but theoretically, it's not required to only be ingoing. So if somebody was backing out, since you are right on the property line next to that sidewalk, maybe if you could address, even though it's not really intended by any of these applicants, just how you would address any extra safety concerns and cautions as to pedestrians and a backing up vehicle?
Sure. Currently, there is on-street parking in front of all these businesses, and so just special care is going to have to be taken with the striping plan and all of that to ensure that we create a safe zone. In fact, I mean, you bring up a pretty good point. Maybe some striping on the sidewalk might be a great visual indicator as somebody's crossing this zone, just to be more aware, potentially. I know, again, you say that's not required, but it's a best practices tool. I think it's easy to accomplish.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, move to audience comments. Are there any audience comments for this particular project? Seeing none, I'd move to Planning Commission discussion. I will warn you, I also researched this one, but I would like to hear if anybody else has any comments in this as well first.
You already asked my question and that got answered, so.
So I will go ahead and make my comments and we'll see if there's anything left. So some thoughts that I had about this project, and we talk about required build lines, we talk about precedent setting with PUDs in here, and we also talked about placemaking on particular blocks of street. I think knowing this location is important. I don't know if that substation will always be across the street, but this is a very uniquely challenged street. You also have the well on the other end. This street kind of gets closed off. It is maybe the lowest trafficked patch of road that I wouldn't say in Norman, but probably anywhere in form-based code. There is just not a lot of street traffic and people that walk there, with the exception of maybe farmers market. And I mean, even still, most of the traffic kind of drives more to where people are parking for that. Taking a lot of that into consideration as to how much traffic we're talking about. I do like the continuous frontage. I think that is to the spirit. We talk about the spirit of form-based code with these items, and keeping that continuous line across. Economically, the ability to build a new building while still operating and not having to shut down their business. I mean, we're talking about a short term, so this would not be a deciding factor for me what happens over a 1-year period, but it is nice to consider that they can keep operating their business, build the new building, and then they'll demo that portion. Had some concerns about traffic, but my understanding is the intent is one way they will back out onto the alley. The whole idea behind this is to protect their vehicles and tools and things, especially important into their trade. I think the fence is a nice solution. I would feel very differently without this fence, and my understanding is the fence will probably be closed most of the time unless there's a particular reason, like cars coming and going. But that not seeing a parking lot, and this is maybe the precedent I would be concerned about, setting a precedent of putting a parking lot and hiding it behind a fence and still satisfying the build line, because that is not to the spirit of form-based code. However, I think in particular circumstances, something like that could make sense, and the nature of this street in particular, and the amount of traffic we're talking about, I think for this project that does make sense. But again, going very clearly on record, this is not something that I would say to take as an allowance that it is okay to put a fence and still just put a parking lot and not comply with a required build line in the form-based code, because that is not to the spirit. This is more to address this block, just as we did on the last project. We are looking at this block and this unique site plan. I'm taking a lot of that into consideration. I also do want to go ahead and address something that maybe nobody else put together, but I have done a project that has a fence like this, and I want to address why that project is different. And I was not on Planning Commission at that time. I was on the applicant side at that time. We have the building at 227 West Main Street and also the adjacent property at 223 West Main Street. I think I got those numbers right. And there is a fence there. At the time that we bought the property on Main Street, there were 2 drives that you could drive into from Main Street, as we wanted to have incremental development of that area. So we weren't ready to build a building on that lot, but we didn't want it to be wasted vacant space. we wanted to have a productive use, and that became Tolly Food Truck Park. So in that, we also put a gate. We also removed the curb cuts, though, which is something I want to just point out, nobody probably will ask, but what's different about that project and this one? Even though there's a gate, it's a pedestrian-only gate because there is no drive. We removed the drive. We actually potentially, especially at the city's perspective, made it a lot safer because there weren't very many drives off of Main Street like that downtown before. So I think that project was my project. So just clarifying why that one was different as a pedestrian gate, that it was intended to be part of incremental development and still hit that form-based code required build line. This is where those fences make sense. That's a place that I felt that it obviously made sense on Main Street. I also feel this one makes sense, doing this fence because of this particular block, even though there is a drive and it's not just a pedestrian gate. I would not be comfortable with this everywhere in form-based code. And that was just a distinction. But this particular project had a lot of questions, really dug in, and I had a lot of those addressed and concerned, and really focusing on the nature of this site, this street, and the lowest possibly trafficked street in form-based code. Are there any other commission comments or discussions?
I'll just say it looks like a nice piece of development. I think it's an upgrade from the current situation, and also given the shape of the development, that it's stair-stepped. There is a parking lot just to the west that's not going anywhere anytime soon. So, but I think this does have the potential to stimulate development going east, where Copeland's is now. So I think it's a great upgrade of the use of the land, and I think it fits. I think it's very forward-looking.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I think it's a beautiful project. I think it's there was already parking that was occurring on the vacant lot right there. It's basically flip-flopping that. In fact, I think if you're talking about incremental development over time, it opens up opportunity with the parking lot owned by First Baptist directly to the west, that you actually have more development opportunity as opposed to what is called a missing tooth in the middle between two buildings. And so I commend the applicants. This is very forward-thinking, especially on Comanche, that I think has a tremendous potential to be a really special street, namely with what's gone on with the well and the farmer's market. And this will be a great addition to the street presence there. So kudos, and this very much is within the intent of the form-based code, in my opinion, as far as the new build structure going up. And finding a creative solution within a CCPUD to accommodate what is a net increase in quality development here.
Thank you. Any other commission discussion? Seeing none, I would take a motion.
I move to approve.
I second.
And a vote. My cell phone, as 8:34. If commission could be back by 8:40. Sound good? Great. Okay. oops.
You lost your
Maybe.
order.
You have a quorum.
Yeah.
I think this might be a commentary on my skills as chair.
Everybody needed Kathy.
We're going to actually postpone that until Maria can return. Commissioner Klindel. I will take this opportunity to thank staff for working so late tonight with us on an especially long agenda item and how much we appreciate the work of what it takes for you to do these items. And happy birthday, Laura. Thank you so much for being here late on your birthday. We very much appreciate you and hope to spend many more of your birthdays with you. Is she really?
Are we going?
Apparently,
to
this is her 21st birthday. That's what, I don't know, that's what your boss told me, 21st. All right, and we're back. We're back. All right, back in order. Moving on, item numbers 7, 8, and 9. Item number 7, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of resolution number R-2324-63. Hampton Homes LLC requests amendment of the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan from office designation to high-density residential designation for 1.48 acres of property located at 2281 36th Avenue Northwest. Item number 8, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-20. Hampton Homes LLC requests rezoning from C1 Local Commercial District to SPUD Simple Planned Unit Development for 1.48 acres of property located at 2281 36th Avenue Northwest. Item number 9, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-25. Campbell Investments LLC requests the closure of a portion of a platted alley in lots 4 and 5, Block 1, Prairie Creek Addition, located at 2281 36th Avenue Northwest. This one's postponed. So my understanding, we didn't have a formal on this, or we did? So we did have a memo or whatever. We didn't have a staff report for that. Okay, sorry about that. From my understanding, that the staff has requested postponement because this item had a challenge with notification requirements. So this is a staff requested postponement. I do also want to acknowledge we had somebody who has been waiting here to make comment on this item. I know because I have his slip. If he would like to come up and still make his comment, I would love to hear it at this point. And then you're also welcome to come back again in the future. But I wanted to not have you waste your time being here for that. So, okay. Are you sure? Okay. Is there any other discussion about this postponement or this item?
Do we need a motion to postpone?
Yes.
I move to postpone.
I second it.
And a vote.
You may vote. Everyone has voted and carried 8-0.
Moving to items number 10, 11, and 12. Item number 10, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of resolution number R-2324-25. Shaz Investment Group LLC requests amendment of Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan from county designation to commercial designation and removal from Special Planning Area 6, SPA 6, Community Separator for 35.56 acres of property generally located at the southeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast. Item number 11, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-9. Shaz Investment Group LLC requests rezoning from A2 Rural Agricultural District to CR Rural Commercial District for 35.56 acres of property generally located at the southeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast. And item number 12, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2324-1, consideration of preliminary plat submitted by Shaz Investment Group LLC, Craft and Toll, for shops at Indian Hills for 156.91 acres of property generally located at the southeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast. Take the staff presentation from our birthday girl.
Thank you. The applicant has requested to hear all six, or to do their presentation for all 6 items together. So do you want to go ahead and read
I missed that. I apologize. We are also going to hear items 13, 14, and 15. Item number 13, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of resolution number R-2324-26. Shaz Investment Group LLC requests amendment of the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan from country residential designation to commercial designation and removal from Special Planning Area 6, SPA 6, Community Separator for 22-51 acres of property generally located at the southwest corner of Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast. Item number 14, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-10. Shaz Investment Group LLC requests rezoning from A2 Rural Agricultural District to CR Rural Commercial District for 22.51 acres of property generally located at the southwest corner of Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast. And item number 15, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2324-2, consideration of preliminary plat submitted by Shaz Investment Group LLC, Craft and Toll, for Indian Hills Market for 93.94 acres of property generally located at the southwest corner for Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast. I will take the staff presentation.
All right, Laura Hoggett with the Planning Department. So I'll go through the southeast corner and then the southwest corner, and then the applicant has a presentation too. So this is for the southeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 12th Avenue Northeast for a 2025 land use plan amendment from country residential to commercial and to remove from Special Planning Area 6, which is the Northern Community Separator. So here's the subject tract. So it's country residential surrounded by country residential with floodplain kind of around in there. They're requesting commercial. And then rezoning from A2 to CR Rural Commercial District and a preliminary plat shops at Indian Hills. They're also requesting removal from the Community Separator Overlay District. So that the overlay requires a 400-foot setback from Indian Hills going south for this property. So they'd be requesting removal from that. Here's showing all A2, and then across the street is out of our city limits. The existing land use is vacant. There are some single-family uses around on the Norman side. There is some commercial use to the north. Here's the aerial. So here's the site plan. They're just requesting development on the northern part. You can kind of see where they're leaving everything open, and then they have some lots to the north to be used as a commercial shopping center. Sorry, I think your slides might be in there twice. Okay. This should be for the southwest corner. So it is country residential, and they're also, it's the same request, going to commercial. And from A2 to CR with removal of the community separator overlay and a preliminary plat for Indian Hills Market. So it's A2 surrounded by A2 with more across the way there. It's currently vacant. And then same for this one, they're only requesting to actually develop the northern part and leave the rest of it open. So we'll go back through all of these. Okay. So staff forwards this request for both of these properties for 2025 and for zoning and a preliminary plat. I'm here for questions, and then the applicant does have a presentation as well.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
I have a question. Does it have to be removed from this special protection area in order to be developed?
Not in order to be developed, but to build closer than 400 feet from the street.
It's in two special zones, right? One is, I thought it was. One was some kind of community division.
Separator?
Yeah, and then the other is the special protection area. Is that right?
So
And the
there-
special protection area I thought was there to protect the watershed. Did I read this correctly?
No, they're kind of the same from the 2025 and zoning. They're both called the community separator. Am I missing something? Okay. It was adopted with the 2004 plan to kind of provide that buffer between us and more.
Yeah, go for it.
So, if I could just say, the community separator is also in the zoning ordinance, so we have the ordinance to remove it from chapter 36, but it was also shown on the land use plan as a reference point. It all just goes together, but it wasn't necessarily a special protection area. It is the community separator, and at that time, the authors were literally trying to make that separation between Norman and Moore.
We speak a little bit more to those zones and understanding that we also have some other special planning areas that we have seen recently along I-35, I believe, totally different purpose, but that was where Briggs Street, kind of 24th, that kind of area between Lindsay and Highway 9 along 24th and I-35 also had been an SPA before. We had some projects that came through for PUDs. It was a landscaping facility, I believe. So that was another, I think that was 5 off the top of my head. Please don't quote me, that is in minutes somewhere. But that was another example of a special planning area. I am also interested to kind of know more about, tell me more about this 400-foot community separator setback. Why was it there? Is there any implications with our neighboring town that they consented, or any, I don't know, political things that, maybe that's not a right question for you, but anything of their input that maybe affected that community separator?
So I think to touch to your question, I think maybe you're talking about in the staff report, like on page 128, where there's the mandatory shifting the density out of the floodplain. That kind of applies to all of country residential, but that country residential is part of this special planning area. It's like the underlying designation, if that makes sense. It might be difficult for me to answer questions about something that happened in 2004.
Thank you.
So, Jane, do you have more about the 400-foot?
So I wasn't here, well, technically I was here in 2004, but I wasn't working on this plan. But, so in the 2025, there's Special Planning Area 6, and it's talking about the clustering of development. And it does specifically say, under required development conditions, it references to retain the visually open character of the area. All buildings will be required to be set back a minimum of 400 feet from the center line of Indian Hill Road. Trying to see, so there's 1 unit per 10 acres. You can get credit for cluster developments, but remember, all of this really is referencing residential development, and so in this case, the applicant is looking to move forward and get retail, commercial office, whatever they end up putting up there in that area. But they are not in any of the floodplain areas or anything like that.
Right,
They're completely north.
Do you have any water quality protection zone areas that might be possibly in this area that might be addressing this? Usually they follow along floodplains and might be some of what maybe the commissioner had questions regarding.
So for the southeast, you can kind of see where the dashed lines are. That's all that's on this one. Todd, do you want to hand it over to Todd?
Yeah. Todd McClellan, development engineer. As Laura said, those green lines or that green shaded area, those are what we call stream planning corridors from the Stormwater Master Plan, and those are going to be turned into water quality protection zone as these areas plat. So when the final plats come in, they'll have to dedicate those as water quality protection zone.
Thank you.
But there's no development proposed in those areas right now with this application.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by commission of staff? Seeing none, I would take the applicant presentation. Thank you. So I appreciate you guys waiting. It's a long meeting.
Oh,
We thank you, and Sean Rieger representing the applicant, Gunnar Joyce with me, Libby Smith, Anthony Hanley with Crafton Toll as well. So big team. We have no problem waiting. I've been here many times till very late in the day. We appreciate all you. We appreciate Laura. Happy birthday. Staff works very hard for us. Believe me, they stay much longer than we ever do, so I appreciate them very much. I want to just follow up on one thing real quick. The special planning areas, you have indeed changed those often. Just recently, you changed special planning area 7, which was down basically near the links, was one that got changed by Armstrong Bank. So that's another one. We've actually seen over the years a lot of these special planning areas change as time has morphed in the area. We believe it's time for this one to change. We believe it's time for this area to recognize that the Turnpike and Northern Norman is probably seeing significant more development in coming years. So let me take you through it. I do want to correct one other thing, just want to make sure we're clear on one point. This graphic showing the entire area change to commercial, please understand that is not accurate. We are only changing the frontage to commercial, just a minor correction on that. So just so we're on the same page. So just real quick, you can see here, basically it's 2 tracks. This is why we're doing them together. We appreciate you allowing us to do this in one fashion. But unlike, I think earlier tonight, you heard it said that PUDs are often brought. This is a straight zoning. This is one you don't see that often. But we felt that the category of rural commercial fit this perfectly because rural commercial is a category you have. There are rural commercial sites in East Norman at a few points around East Norman, a few section line intersections. And they are designed for section line intersections. That's what we have here. And they're designed as a sort of a small footprint rural commercial product. And that's what we're proposing here. You have to be, you can go only to a maximum 35,000 square feet on the building. And it basically maintains a rural character. So this developer is basically Home Creations. They've done many things in the Moore area, and they've done a lot just north of here. They've developed a great many neighborhoods just north of this area. And so it's a little bit probably odd for you to look at this and say there's nothing around it. Actually, just north of this, there is a lot happening north of this line. And so the hope here is that these dots of rural commercial can actually gather some of those sales taxes coming down from the Moore area and go along this line. We believe this works either with the Turnpike or without, as it will come through here, more and more likely that it will. But we think this works either way, and we're prepared to put it in with or without. So let me just show you a little bit more. I think Laura took you through pretty well showing you what would happen. It's just the frontages of these parcels. Part of that, too, is in response to neighbors. This site was taken through multiple times on pre-development hearings. I think this is our 3rd run-through, and each time we were faced with significant opposition from the neighbors to the north. And I don't see them here tonight. I always hesitate to say that because they may show up in 5 minutes and I'll be here. I don't know. But they were here at these pre-development meetings and they did not like it because what was proposed last time was big neighborhoods. The last 2 times we took this through, it was big neighborhoods. And it never even made it to this dais because it was rejected by the neighborhoods. This time they showed up, and that was one of their first questions. What is happening behind the commercial frontages? What are you going to do? We said, we're leaving it A2. We're just leaving that back area full A2. We're not touching it. And I don't know, you never know what changes the mindset of a protester or an objecting party, but that seemed to find acceptance. So that is why we're now here tonight with this one. Just again, a summary, I think it's been pretty well summarized, but the back is left as A2. You see those WQPZ zones is the yellow dashed area, as Mr. McClellan talked about. We are not touching those with any development. They will be left as open space and detention areas, and no plans to develop those whatsoever. This is rural commercial district. You again don't see many straight open district zonings. That's what this one is. Intended for section lines, and your header, this is your code, says this commercial district is intended for the conduct of retail trade and to provide personal services to meet the regular needs and convenience of rural residents. So specifically designed for a situation like this, and we think it works pretty well. Very simple plan. The back end, the south end, you see that huge lot is A2. The frontage is just simply small dots of commercial, I would call it, across the frontage of Indian Hills. And we think it works quite well. And this is the east side of the 12th Avenue, and you see, again, a large back lot of A2 and just simply dots of rural commercial across the front. That's the preliminary plat. Very simple there as well. That's the plan in context. You can see it's just basically a few dots of commercial lots across the front. And you see, this is unincorporated county up here. There is already significant commercial and industrial right across the street in this location. So we think it marries pretty well. I think with that, that's it. That's just more of a close-up of the lots. And with that, I'll leave it at that and go back to the area. We'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and I'll be that quick and hopefully to shorten your night as much as I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant?
I have a question. If the turnpike comes in, do you anticipate a zoning request to actually just go commercial?
If I understand your question, if the turnpike comes in with the zoning we wouldn't change it. The change would happen now. If the turnpike came in later, I think if I answer your question correctly, if it changes the location, then perhaps we shift the commercial down to front the turnpike. Is that what
Well,
you're asking,
I'm just
Commissioner?
trying to think in terms of intensity. If there's a lot more traffic, would you want more intense commercial?
Yeah, maybe. I think we would wait and see. I think we'd want to see, is there off-ramp frontage roads like Memorial, or is it a rural turnpike condition like you see some places? I think that would depend on what the actual layout of that turnpike looked like at that location.
Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, I would move to audience comments. Seeing none, Planning Commission discussion.
I think it's going to spur more development. I mean, it's, certainly it's not going to remain unchanged for long. And that's not a criticism. It's just, once the commercial's there, the houses will build near it. I was talking to a fellow commissioner right before the meeting. When I go out to the lake on Alameda, it's nice that I can buy some things. I think there's a time and a place for commercial rural. So, is this the time and the place for it? I don't know. But I think something we do want to keep in mind is, as we talk about infill development in the city, do we want sprawling development to the boundaries of the city, or do we want to focus the development inward? And I think we think about precedent, and that's really the big question, right? Do we want to focus the development inward, or do we want to let it reach the boundaries of the city and just have it kind of sprawling? And it's not neither or, right? It's a question of the balance. How do you strike the balance?
Any other Planning Commission discussion?
I guess as a Ward 5 resident, I'm looking at these cross streets and this is Ward 6, which if I remember correctly on our 2025 plan, it's going to have more, I mean, urban development is something that's anticipated. It was discussed a lot when I was on the reapportionment committee, that Ward 6 will likely have more development and end up seeing a lot more change to the ward boundaries as, yes, when the development goes in, there will be residential at some point. But that was talked about by everyone on that committee more as a given rather than a, I don't know, something to dread. Just the natural development that does happen. There is infill that we desire, and we struggle sometimes to see eye to eye on what that looks like in the city, but I think this is appropriate for where it's at. I don't think that anyone that is, I mean, I think we'd have protest if it had been upsetting. It's close enough to the city that it's appropriate. I've driven that road there. I don't think it's going to be inappropriate as far as what else is there. You guys can't see me pointing, but we're sharing a screen over here. So I don't know. I personally feel like it's appropriate development for where it's at. And whether the turnpike does come or doesn't come, I think that the commercial there will be supported even before residential comes in there. There's enough commuting going on between Moore and Norman along those roads. And I like how much they're actually keeping rural, but that's just my opinion.
Thank you. Hoping for a barbecue restaurant like down by the lake. We'll see.
I know.
It would be excellent.
I'm missing that smell already. They closed up.
Any other planning commission discussion for this item? Seeing none, I would take a motion if there's none.
I make a motion to approve.
I second that.
And a vote?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. It needs
okay.
to be specific items, doesn't it?
As a point of order, even though we heard items 10, 11, and 12, 13, 14, and 15 together, we will actually need to vote separately on items 10, 11, 12, and then separately for items 13, 14, and 15. Would you like to make a new motion?
Sure. I make a motion to approve items 9, 10,
10,
11, 12. Is that what they are?
Yes.
11, 12, okay.
And I
And
second that.
can we do them in the same?
Oh, no.
Let's just do them separate. Let's just keep moving.
10, 11, 12.
And I second that on 10, 11, 12.
And a vote.
You may vote.
It's not barrel rolling. Because it's all.
Everyone has, motion carried 8-0.
And then we don't have currently a motion on the floor for items 13, 14, and 15. Should a commissioner care to make a motion for that?
I make a motion, we approve items 13, 14, and 15.
And I'll second that.
You may vote. Everyone has voted. 8-0.
Moving to items 16, 17, and 18. Item 16, okay. 16, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of resolution number R-64, Alliance Development Group LLC requests amendment of the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan from low-density residential designation to commercial designation and from future urban service area to current urban service area for approximately 10.02 acres of property generally located the northwest corner of 36th Avenue Northwest and Franklin Road. Item number 17, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-23, Alliance Development Group LLC requests rezoning from A2 Rural Agricultural District and PUD Planned Unit Development O-0910-14 to PUD Planned Unit Development for approximately 369.74 acres of property generally located east of 48th Avenue Northwest, south of Indian Hills Road, north of Franklin Road, and west of 36th Avenue Northwest. And item number 18, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2324-8, consideration of a preliminary plat submitted by Raven Investments LLC, SMC Consulting Engineers PC for Bridgeview at Carrington, a planned unit development for approximately 369.74 acres of property generally located at east of 48th Avenue Northwest, south of Indian Hills Road, and north of Franklin Road, and west of 36th Avenue Northwest. I believe we have a Commissioner McCowan would like to recuse from this item. If we could please have a motion for the recusal.
Move to recuse Commissioner Cowan.
And a vote.
You may vote. Everyone has, motion carried 7-0.
And we'll take the staff presentation.
Good evening, this is Melissa Navarro with the Planning Department. We have an application from the Alliance Development Group LLC for a Norman 20, this is not showing. Oh, there it is. For a Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan Amendment from low-density residential designation to commercial designation and future urban service area to current urban service area. For the property located at the northwest corner of 36th Avenue and Avenue Northwest and Franklin Road. This is what the existing Norman 2025 land use map looks like right now. And this is the proposed one. You can see the top east lot, it becomes residential, but with higher density. And then the bottom one, becomes commercial with the proposed. Okay, the applicant is also asking for a rezone to rezone from A2 Rural Agricultural and PUD ordinance number 0910-14 to PUD Plan Unit Development, and also a preliminary plat Bridgeview at Carrington for the property located at east of 48th Avenue Northwest, south of Indian Hills Road, north of Franklin Road, and west of 36th Avenue Northwest. This is the existing zoning. You can see most of the subject tract is already zoned PUD, and the added tracts are zoned agricultural. This is the existing land use. It is mostly vacant and with a few residential around the area. This is an aerial of the development. And this is 36th Avenue Northwest looking south. This is the intersection between 36th Avenue and Franklin Road. This is Franklin Road looking west. This is the intersection between Franklin Road and 48th Avenue Northwest. This is 48th Avenue looking north. And this is the intersection between 48th Avenue and Indian Hills Road. And finally, this is Indian Hills Road looking west. This is an aerial with some perspective of the area. And this one is the preliminary plat and the proposed site plan. Bridgeview at Carrington addition is proposed as a planned unit development of roughly 370 acres with various uses including commercial, single-family residential, multifamily residential, institutional, and open space, passive recreational. There's also a public park in the area, the Ruby Grant Community Park. Most of the subject property is currently zoned as J&J Properties Addition Planned Unit Development, which was approved by the City of Norman in 2010 with the ordinance number 0910-14. This proposal adds approximately 20 additional acres, and the applicant is requesting to rezone the 20 additional acres from A2 to PUD. The proposed development meets the purpose of the current land use designation for the future urban service area, meeting the Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan. The surrounding area has access to utilities, making the subject property suitable for development, and the increased density will increase runoff and traffic in the area. However, drainage and traffic have been addressed in the plan. Staff forwards this request for rezoning from A2 Rural Agricultural District to PUD Plan Unit Development and Ordinance number 02324-23 to the Planning Commission for consideration and recommendation to City Council. I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant is also here to talk about the project in a few minutes.
Thank you. Any questions by commission of staff? Seeing none, I take the applicant presentation.
Good evening, Gunnar Joyce with Rieger Law Group on behalf of the applicant, and I've got a project team with me of Richard McCown representing the developer, and then Chris Anderson's in the back with SMC Civil Engineering. As you just heard, here is the overall project, and I'll be quick because a lot of it is already approved, but I want you to see the whole thing and how it works in conjunction with each other. You can see in yellow the outline of the original J&J PUD area, and then in blue are the 20 acres we're bringing in tonight. So the north piece is residential, and the south piece down there at the hard corner of Franklin and 36 will be the commercial. So again, just says the same thing, existing zoning is PUD. We would match that with PUD here. And then the comp plan, this will go to commercial, and that will as well change from future urban service area to current urban service area. There's the preliminary site plan. It's a master plan community overall of about 370 acres. But like I just mentioned, we're only really bringing in this 20 piece here to the north with residential and the 10 acres down here for commercial. Here's the zoning exhibit, and it briefly want to show you the amount that isn't changing from the 2010 approved plan. Commercial up here along Indian Hills Road, no change to that. The multifamily as we move south, no change to that. There's a 14-acre school site as well, no change from the original one. And then this is all residential, large lots, and then small lots as we go south on Franklin, and then the commercial. So we're adding in 10 acres here residential, adding in 10 acres of commercial. And originally there was a plan for assisted living right in this area. The assisted living has been removed, and so there are more single-family residential lots in the area. Here's the 2010 site plan. As you can see right here is the 10 acres that was not owned by the developer at the time of original approval. Down here is the 10 acres added for commercial. And right here is the assisted living that is now single-family residential. Just to call out, originally there were 69 acres of open space, so a pretty substantial open space plan. They have gone even above and beyond that now with the new plan, bringing in 20 acres overall, but 96 acres are open space. And this is a good point. I'm going to bring up Richard, and he can tell you about some of those amenities and some other things in the development.
Thank you, Gunnar. Richard McCowan, 4409 Cannon Drive. Really, we've learned a lot since 2010. I'll be really brief about it. One of the things that we've discovered is our residents are more or less willing to turn their 8-year-olds loose and let them explore the neighborhood. And so you'll notice there are a lot of green alleyways that are running behind the houses. And that's really an extraordinary discovery that we've made. We build all of our neighborhoods with a 4-foot see-through fence. We call it a social fence. And most of our houses that are built today in this part of the country have lots of windows across the back of the house, and it allows parents and neighbors to actually see what's going on in those open spaces. And it really gives people a tremendous, that thing that we all want to do. We all want to be able to let our kids, achieve a kind of independence and go and explore. And quite possibly in this case, there'll be a lot of kids whose parents will be brave enough to let them walk to school, the stories we've heard from yesteryear. And we worked with Moore Public Schools. This is all in Moore Public Schools jurisdiction. We worked with them extensively, not just back in 2010, but we've kept up that conversation. They're very excited about collaborating with us on an elementary school here. You'll notice that the long north-south stream system has angled slightly. This plan is even more sensitive to the existing topographic reality that's here. A whole lot of the area that actually has a defined creek channel, we're leaving all of that intact, all the trees and everything kind of on the entire east portion of this, the large kind of jagged big green area. That's being left in its natural state, except the one place we have to cross it to access the land to the north that we're bringing in. But then the land further to the west with this kind of long, over half-mile long creek, we saw the opportunity to really extend a long pond, and we've had a lot of success building youth sports facilities that are open to the entire community. We have lots of football teams, soccer teams that come and practice in the private parkland that we maintain in the Carrington neighborhood just south of this. And here we have the opportunity to develop this as a rowing facility, as rowing has become an important thing in Oklahoma. Who knew that was going to be a thing? I'm really excited that this is a new way to get people outdoors and exploring new, particularly Title IX sports as father of daughters. So anyway, I'm going to leave it right there. It's been a long meeting. I could talk about this project all night. It's got tons of walking trails and lots of green space, lots of exciting lessons we've learned over the last 13 years, and we're excited to be incorporating those into this, what we think is going to be a really dynamic neighborhood. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Questions by commission of the applicant?
I have a question. It looks like a great project. Did I misread it? It looks like the impervious area is pretty high. Is it 75%? Is that what I read?
So there's allowance for impervious in certain areas to get above 60% because the entire development is so green. And so
Okay.
basically.
Yes, it doesn't look like it has that much impervious.
Exactly, right.
And there's no concern about the drainage because of the way the detention is going to be designed?
Exactly. I can summarize it. Chris Anderson's in the back could go into great detail. Richard might want to as well. But the staff report has noted that there are extensive drainage and detention ponds running throughout, and really a lot of it is what Richard's talking about is what could turn into that rowing facility. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's been my favorite part of this project. But essentially, all of that we usually talk about on like a 5 or 10 acre site at the preliminary plat stage has been done here as well and is substantially green throughout the development, which justifies the request in some of the areas like multifamily on individual lots. I think it asks for up to 95% impervious. So on those tiny lots, you basically cover it with concrete because of the green space that's been laid out elsewhere in the master plan part.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Could you address how those alleys, those green alleys behind the houses are going to be addressed for maintenance ongoing?
Yep, so there will be a property owners association, and we're just doing a dance here. It's in the PUD that all those have to be maintained by the POA, which will be established. You want to take the next one?
Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, I would move to audience comments. Do we have any audience comments for this item? Thank you for hanging out with us. Once again, please say your name and address at the beginning.
Adam Ross, 3308 Winchester Circle. I did not plan to speak, but I thought it was notable for myself how much of a lacking of I just want to push back on this idea that outward expansion, outward suburban sprawl should naturally follow like a development of a highway. There is okay, I got into this thing called New Urbanism about 2 years ago. I went to England. My wife has relatives there. That was my first time out of the country. And I experienced a quality of life there that the people live that we don't have in America. Richard talked about like green space for kids to explore. I want my son to grow up in Norman. I'm an Oklahoma kid. I grew up in Enid, Oklahoma City, then Enid, went to school at OSU. I believe Norman, of the cities in Oklahoma, has the best chance of being a place that stands out in terms of quality of life. Suburban sprawl is not those things, okay? And I just want to say that here because I want to draw the line, essentially, because we have AIM Norman coming up. And yes, a little outward expansion is okay, but we don't have to build along a turnpike that was just built. That's bad for a variety of reasons. There is nothing that brings more community and child independence, elderly independence to an old age, than actually mixing the uses, having destinations that are in close proximity. I'm not saying we all have to give up our cars. Like, I don't want to give up mine. I have a family. But I'm asking for, like, developments that actually support transportation options, community-centered, human-centric development. There are Strong Towns came to Norman. They did a community action lab. You can disagree with Strong Towns. Maybe Norman is not financially insolvent, okay? Like, maybe the math doesn't add up. Maybe we are self-sustaining, but there is a shift happening, a movement happening that I'm a part of. I'm starting a group that is a whole network of Strong Towns groups around cities across North America. There's so many organizations that are now advocating against suburban sprawl. Strong Towns, Transportation for America, Smart Growth America, Verdunity, Urban 3. There's all these people out there saying this. And so I want people here to recognize that and understand that things are changing and we have to change with it.
Thank you for your comments, Adam.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Are there any other audience comments? Seeing none, I would move to Planning Commission discussion.
I really like this development. I like how much green space there is. It reminds me of some of the, one of my favorite neighborhoods I've ever lived in with my family, with all the areas that my kids would be able to walk, and I wouldn't have to worry about them crossing a street to get 3 streets over because there was a bike and walking path that went all the way through the neighborhood. And I really like the idea of, instead of seeing floodplain and drainage as an obstacle, seeing it and seizing it as an opportunity. And I think this is a really novel idea, and I think it is a forward-thinking idea. And so I just wanted to comment that. Thank you.
I'd like to comment. I would love to live there. And if it was built in a timely manner for the canal, I might even take up rowing. Just saying. I think it's awesome.
I have a couple comments. I think it looks like a great project. I like that it incorporates ADUs. I think that's great. It provides a lot of opportunity for extended family to come and live in place with, I'd like my parents to live close to us if we could, or my in-laws. They're great too. Something else, leaving some of that land untouched and not just raising it, I think is going to add more quality of life than a lot of us realize. When you move into a home, if there are existing trees, that means there's existing wildlife. And I think too often we forget that listening to birds, seeing squirrels, being close to the natural world is what human beings need. And by keeping some of that there and not trying to rebuild it later and hoping in 20 years it comes back, but by leaving it there, I think that's an excellent design. I'm done.
I do have a few anecdotal personal experiences to share. The social fit, I've been through some of this developers' other communities at different junctures of my life because they've developed a lot of communities in our community, a lot of neighborhoods in our community. The 4-foot social fence, I can speak to personally and how those are used because my daughter's soccer team practiced in one of those, just beyond the fence of a neighborhood where the developer actually, one of the developing teams actually lived themselves. Not that we would penalize an applicant for being here or not, but that is always nice to see that these are our community members that are coming and asking these requests to build the type of neighborhoods that they don't just say they would live in, that they have proven they actually live in. I think we've seen some really interesting things in town, like the Oakhurst there's a term, it's escaping me, I could have told you 30 minutes ago, I think it's a greenway, but these easements that exist for lines and such, that they actually have some of their backyards that have these kind of green alleyways in them. So we actually have a little bit of a historic examples of that, even in Norman. Part of why I ask about how they're being maintained, because in those cases, you have a utility company typically just mowing it down, and it is a nice feature, but it isn't getting maintained in all cases. And this is a very different situation, I think, for this development, and just wanted to point out that similarity to other places that we've seen things like this. I think that's a really exciting way to use incorporating possibly smaller lot sizes to increase development because you have community backyards. That is what we're kind of seeing in these shared backyards. There's a lot of open space on this. Obviously, we've already said a lot of untouched natural wild and unmanicured development. These, even when we see green space, it is typically a very manicured green space, and this developer regularly puts some interesting natural curvature, even just seeing how they have continued to improve in their designs to that effect, looking at the prior version of this PUD to this one. And I'm glad that they pointed that out. I did ask a question early on because we have seen another project very close to this very recently for Franklin Woods that also had a lot of interesting use of club space. And in that, interesting use of green space. And in that one I also had brought up, I also had lived across from Sutton Wilderness. I really enjoyed being able to walk to a very large park and enjoy that as like an extended amenity, that these ideas of having amenities that aren't just on your own site, but how you can work together to share amenities within your community. And there were a lot of residents that came out to that meeting. And so you'll notice I know it's late, but we don't have as many residents of the neighboring areas at this meeting tonight. And I did ask, Have you spoken to them in advance about this project? And my understanding is when they did a meeting at the clubhouse at Carrington in relation to Franklin Woods, as they promised that they would do to us at the Planning Commission last time before they went to City Council. And they also had this plan because they knew these were the same neighbors on here. And I should have asked this when they were up there to speak to themselves, but my understanding is there were no concerns about this because the main concerns that they had before were in that multifamily component of the other project. So wanted to point out that difference a little bit of what we're seeing in the participation from the community on this project versus another one too. I really like this. I think ADUs are a great solution. We've been talking about them a lot in our community. Exciting to see them being included in our PUDs. We talk about parks a lot, and there's no public park here, which also makes no publicly maintained cost of park, and yet we still have these amenities. There's also some really thoughtful design, even if you look at some of these green alleys, these green shared backyards. They probably have a better term for these than what I'm using. You'll notice a lot of them connect out to the roads, allowing kind of cut-throughs in your own neighborhood. And I lived on Poppy Lane in Poppy Grove at one point. You know all of my addresses. Please do not commit fraud against me, I'm asking. But in that time, I used a lot of, they were detention easements to walk through the neighborhood and kind of sometimes take a longer walk, shorter walk, things like that too. And I like that thoughtful use of how something functional can also be, I don't know, a perk. I don't know, something that the form and function together, I guess. I mean, for usability. So I think those are all of my comments on this one. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the other project and seeing more projects like this and giving that encouragement to it. Is there any other Planning Commission discussion for this item? If there's not, I would take a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
I second it.
And a vote?
You may vote. Everyone has voted, and the motion carried 7-0.
Moving to item number, oh, I'm so sorry. We can call Commissioner McCowan to return. We'll give her a moment to come back. Moving to item number 19, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-26. Kappa Alpha Theta requests rezoning from R2 two-family dwelling district 845 Chautauqua, R2 two-family dwelling district with special use for off-street parking 823 Chautauqua, and RM-2 low-density apartment district with special use for off-street parking, 748 College, 2 Spud Simple Planned Unit Development for 1.20 acres of property located at northeast corner of Chautauqua Avenue and Parsons Street, 823 and 845 Chautauqua, and 748 College. And we'll take the staff presentation.
Melissa Navarro with the Planning Department. We have an application from Kappa Alpha Theta to rezone from R2 to Family Dwelling District, R2 to Family Dwelling District with a special use for off-street parking, and RM2 Low Density Apartment District with special use for off-street parking to SPUD Simple Plan Unit Development. For the properties located at 823 and 845 Chautauqua and 748 College Avenue. This is the existing zoning. You can see the subject tract is surrounded by residential multifamily, denser than the west part of the area. This is the existing land use, mostly residential and off-street parking. Here you can see the subject tract is in the proximity to the university campus. This is the existing Norman 2025 land use. It is high-density residential. And this is College Avenue looking south. And this is the intersection between College Avenue and Parsons Street. This is Parsons Street looking west. And this is the intersection between Parsons Street and Chautauqua. And this is Chautauqua looking north. This is the proposed site plan. The subject property is a 1.2 acre student housing development currently divided into 3 parcels. The applicant requests to rezone to SPUD simple plan unit development to fit an addition to the existing building and redesign the off-street parking areas. The proposed site plan includes access drives on Chautauqua Avenue, College Avenue, and Parsons Street. The closest park in the area is Lions Park. The subject property is located 1 block west of the University of Oklahoma, surrounded by fraternities and sororities. The proposed use for the SPUD simple plan unit development are similar to the surrounding properties. City staff does not anticipate negative traffic impacts. Staff forward this request for rezoning from R2 to family dwelling district, R2 with a special use for off-street parking, and RM2 low-density apartment district with a special use for off-street parking to SPUD simple plan unit development as ordinance number 2324-26 to the Planning Commission for consideration and recommendation to City Council. I'm happy to take any questions, and the applicant is here also to present the project.
Thank you. Any questions by commission of staff? Seeing none, I take the applicant presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I believe last item of the night, so we're right at the threshold here. Gunnar Joyce again with Rieger Law Group. And the project team tonight, we have Shannon Polly, who is with Kappa Alpha Theta. She's the building committee chair. And then we have Nick Kadako with GH2 Architects, and we have Colton Wayman with Wallace Engineering. And so let me orient you on the site tonight. We are basically, is what I have learned, is North Greek Row. As you can see, this is the subject site. A little difficult to pick up with all the yellow, but if you can catch my cursor here. And it's surrounded by fraternities and sororities with their homes and associated parking lots. And then obviously OU has some buildings in the vicinity as well. And then as you go east, that is the OU campus. So really kind of a very institutional fraternity, sorority, and university area. As we zoom in, here is the little better view of the site. Currently, as Melissa mentioned, it's 3 separate lots. And so part of this proposed development, it's an item that doesn't have to come to you. It's a city administrative review. But I want you to be aware of it, is a lot line adjustment. And so 3 current properties right now, but this proposal will include a lot line adjustment that'll bring this L shape into 1 legal description, 1 ownership. Reason for that, it allows for a more efficient use because we don't have to worry about internal lot lines where it's contiguous ownership. So as exists today, where they are proposing this addition is a property line that they could not do without removing that property line because there's side yard setbacks. So that's not part of the zoning, but is part of the project. The zoning currently is bifurcated. It's pretty interesting. It's a product of some historical uses, but the west side of the property is R2, which is 2-family residential. And this parking lot over here is RM2, and it has a special use for an off-street parking lot. That parking lot was approved in 2020. It was, I believe, the very first COVID virtual meeting. Went back and watched those minutes to remember that zoning, but that is approved right now for a parking lot associated with this. At the time, the building committee knew they wanted to acquire that lot, but didn't have firmed up plans as to what the use would be. The closing of that property was contingent upon rezoning, so they got a parking lot rezoned, but now that you have the full project team that we introduced, architects, civil engineers lined up, they know the overall master plan with what they want to do. So we're bringing it back today with a full spud to bring all 3 of these properties into one consistent, efficient zoning. So that's the kind of long-winded way. Now let me tell you more specifics on the site plan and the proposal. There's a new addition to the house. And so if you can see the difference in color, the grayer building is existing today. That's the sorority house. And the white is the addition. And what that addition really features is a multi-purpose room that is really going to be the chapter meeting space so that they can now hold their meetings on site and not have to go off site for their chapter meetings. It also has some pretty substantial renovation in this area and throughout the existing house, one of which is going to be a kitchen renovation, going to renovate the existing kitchen and add on, so be able to have a bigger kitchen space, 2 substantially large bathrooms in the new area, and then a large study space and additional open spaces throughout. New parking lot to the east makes up for lost parking that exists today up in this north area, and there's existing parking that wraps the house right now behind it. And so this allows for a better traffic circulation and flow. There's no more angled parking on the rear of the house. And currently existing before this development, there's basically 99 parking spots for Theta. This proposed plan results in 98. So we're talking about really not adding additional parking. It's basically replacing what existed to the north with the new addition. Here's a new zoomed in, so I can call out some of the, the highlights. Here is the existing front door, if you can see my cursor there, and then adding on will be a new usable outdoor patio space and a new ADA accessible entrance into the building. And then here's the new addition, obviously, the new north parking lot, and then we get back into the new east parking lot. That parking lot's gone through already, multiple designs, working with neighbors. The pre-development notice went out, and then one of the main neighbors that was heavily involved in the last go-around in 2020 still lives really close to the property and was a Theta, still is a Theta. And so a cherished alum is what the Theta team has continued to say. And so they've worked with her on increasing this open space. And the Thetas are really excited about that. There's a number right here that calls out 11. That's Theta Park. They're going to use it as a usable open space. So it's not just green space for the sake of green space, but something they're excited about being able to actually use. As you saw from the street views that Melissa showed, there's an existing very tall 6, maybe even 6.5, 7 foot masonry wall that kind of wraps this corner. There's a proposal, as you can see up here, to do a low masonry wall to kind of keep the spirit of that wall that's been in the area, but to bring it down, one, for kind of safety security reasons, so visually you can see into that parking lot, but also to kind of really play into that usability of the space, and kind of thinking about having it be at sitting height, so where the girls can sit there and enjoy the space on a great sunny day. Also, there's been talks about, obviously, picture opportunities. I think that area could really lend itself to that. As you can see, there are a lot of trees on the site, and this is one of the most important parts of the plan. All these trees that have the white indicator, white arrows in them, are existing trees that will be preserved, and you can see there's heavy tree preservation in the new parking lot. There are also new trees that will be planted. These red ones are indicators of basically ornamental trees, so maybe like a red bud or something decorative. And then there's a large new tree to be planted there, a large new tree to be planted right here as well in the outdoor patio space. So here's the existing aerial. As you can see, there's 2 rows of parking up here, and there's parking all the way back behind. This is the approved parking lot from 2020. It hadn't been built yet. And here is the proposal. So I believe it lends itself to better traffic circulation, not having these angled parking back here, no angled parking up here, which is a more efficient way. You can kind of pack in more parking spaces in that area, and then the new site plan for the parking lot as well. Here's the existing street view. The Thetas have been known in the community as one of the best sororities at really curb appeal and taking care of their property. That is expected to continue. This is how it currently looks right now. And here's the proposed extension. So right here, way to the right of the screen, is the current entry that you see here. And this area over here where there's nothing is going to be where the addition is. So if we go one more time, that's the addition. And the plan is to match that exterior material so it looks like all one house, not any kind of new brick or new exterior where you would notice that's a much later addition. And with that, I'll invite Shannon up to say a few words about the new addition.
Guys, my name is Shannon Pauley. I'm representing the Facility Corporation Board for Kappa Alpha Theta. I wanted to come and kind of be a face for this project. I am a Norman resident. I'm a Norman native. So, I think being here and kind of showing you that, we've got a Norman native who's going to be, overseeing this project and making sure that we maintain the beauty that you guys are used to seeing. I know our goal is to preserve this house. This house is 90 years old. And so we're really proud of the fact that we're going to keep this house and we're going to renovate it and we're going to add on to it so that it can be a really, usable and functional space for our members. That being said, the parcel, making sure that we can make that a cohesive unit, I think it will make the spaces more beautiful between our existing lots and then the new lot, making sure that those are in one space. So again, I just wanted to introduce myself, let you know that I live in Norman. I have lived on College Street. I don't live there anymore, but I'm also a teacher here in Norman. I was grading papers over here during the meeting, so I'm really sorry if I was on my phone, but I appreciate you guys being patient and listening to our presentation.
Thank you. Questions of the applicant?
Yes. I do want to commend you guys for the amount of trees that you are keeping. I think that is hugely important. I did drive by the site that is going to be a parking lot and, a little sadness at having to put asphalt over the grass, but I get it. I would want to ask, I understand that wall that's there is very tall, and are you going back with some form of like a low pony wall? I know you mentioned the corner that's there already is part of Theta Park, but along what I'm trying to get at is how can you hide the cars and the fact that this is a surface parking lot? And the trees help, that's great, and I'm hugely grateful that you are doing that. But is there a plan to put any form of, low brick wall around all of it like it is right now? Or what's the plan?
I think that's something we're happy to take a look at. When we went to pre-development, basically our discussion with any neighbors that wanted to show up was, what do you want to see there? We didn't get very many attendants that really wanted to talk details of the project. The only one that really showed up was Brent Swift, and this is in the pre-development minutes, but he basically was talking about the fact that the existing house was torn down back in 2020. And so we understood those comments, but didn't receive much feedback on what they wanted to see, the neighborhood wanted to see as far as how far extending out that pony wall. So I think that's something that the design team's happy to take a look at.
I would highly recommend looking at that and landscaping along the side. I think, just as it makes it a whole lot more pleasant to walk by it and not look at the front ends of cars and a brick wall. So brick wall plus landscape. That would be my suggestion.
Yes, I'm Nick Hudako, GH2 Architects. Currently in the plan that you saw, it's a little bit hard because zoomed out in detail. The intent that's shown on there is all along Parsons, all along College. There is that pony wall as well, not just the corner.
Okay.
All of those existing trees and landscaping along the street that are in the area between the sidewalk and the street are to be maintained as well. We are still working on our landscaping plan and developing that. The current plan now is to also have landscaping along that pony wall. So everything that you mentioned you would like to see is currently in the plan as well.
Excellent, thank you.
And we've been in conversations with Phyllis, who is the neighbor across the street. She's our Theta alum, and so we're working with her also, just having conversations with what she wants to view, because it's important for us to make sure that she's happy. And so, like we were saying earlier, we're open to neighborhood suggestions for that wall. I think we want to make sure that the
Well, Phyllis has a great idea of how to landscape. So given her experience with her other business in Norman, I think she's probably a great resource.
I will add another comment to that. On the north side, where there is still going to be parking, there are existing walls. We will be demoing part of them to make space for the new addition and everything, but we plan on coming back with those walls the same that are still there with landscaping as well to shield that parking off of Chautauqua as well.
Great, thank you.
And while you're up there, can I, just to clarify, you were talking pony walls, but is there like a certain material that you're planning on using?
Yeah, so it'll be brick that's shown existing now that's on the north side. We plan on matching that brick as well, white painted brick with either a cast
Can you
stone
go back a couple slides? I think
There is a slide looking north from the city that you can see that pretty well on. There's
like that type of
Yeah, so you can see that wall there. We're planning on going back with a wall similar to that as well, along all of the parking, Parsons College, and then as well as this north parking as well.
Okay. I had a couple other questions. Do you have a lighting plan, and what type of lighting, as far as like downcast lighting, are you trying to achieve or propose there, I guess?
That was a comment we had as well. We are still working on those plans. We haven't gotten that far. Our intent is to have, as recommended, no light overspill from the property lines. We're looking at also having minimum light levels for safety, and also keeping those not necessarily at a 20 feet up light poles, having them be more landscape lighting to maintain that as well. So similar to what's on the lot now, we don't have much lighting overspill or anything like that. Aesthetics is something that's very important to the Thetas, and safety as well. So we're trying to do our best to balance that, not only feature the house, the landscaping itself, but making sure that that property on the east side, that is parking lot, is well lit for safety's sake. But we did hear the comments from the neighbors, and we do not want any directional light overspilling the property that's visible to them, but enough to make it safe for the parking lot itself.
And Cameron, we are under the commercial outdoor lighting ordinance here, so that's drafted in, and all of what he just said is required by code. So the familiar dark sky ordinance you're familiar with that requires full cutoff lighting and has to be pointed down is drafted into the PUD.
Only other potential question, comment, is I saw there was allowance for up to 6 signs within the PUD. Just seemed a little excessive, but is there specific reasoning, kind of location for that?
I think more or less just the identification signs, whether it's the calling out Kappa, Alpha Theta, or really in this area, it's important to designate your parking lot as your parking lot. And so if we had a street view on the other side, they have 2 across the street that basically everyone does actually, that there's kind of 2 pillars at the entrance that says our parking and our parking only. So I think that's kind of what you'd expect at the entrance on the the north and the east parking lot, and then in the kind of main house area, there's the the traditional sorority sign.
So effectively, there's 2 per entrance. Is that right?
Right.
Any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Seeing none, I would move to audience comments. I don't think we have any audience members left. I would move to Planning Commission discussion.
It's nice to see a project that works with the existing features and not just try and clear cut everything. So thank you.
You have some very important thetas that had a lot of feedback onto this project. And if I said it on other projects, I feel it's warranted to say here, the feedback, making the accommodations, things like matching the existing pony wall, landscaping along. And also, I know your alumni have some high expectations of what this property will continue to look like, and hope to see those met. I did also have just, thoughts on this parking lot layout, which I know was maybe not always the version of this parking lot layout. And the idea of having this private park space, again, significantly better. I think we build so many parking lots with this anecdotal strip of grass, maybe with a tree in it, that's not really open space. There's no activity you could do with that. That doesn't really feel like green space. This actually feels like they've incorporated some green space and have clearly sacrificed some parking to do that in order to soften the impact that it's having to the area. And also finding ways to make that functional. That space, even though it's very small, I think would be great for outdoor movie nights or having small presentations, maybe acoustic music during reasonable hours with permits. Things like that that could be activity space. I would love to see even a bench possibly added to the corner on the outside of the walls for safety reasons and encouragement, but maybe something that even acts as a community activator that could, again, taking these things that don't always have to be public parks and making, features that even if only visually make big difference in with the trees, everything. All of those are things that we are all benefiting from, not just those property owners in our city. I did have a comment about the commercial lighting standards, and in particular being commercial lighting next to other residential. I think some thought could be put into that, for full cutoff lighting. This has recently been brought up as a concern on other projects, that height of poles. So it sounds like you've gotten those comments already too, but just as more of a comment amongst commission to be thoughtful that even when complying with the code, sometimes these things, putting commercial next to residential, if you put a very high pole on there, suddenly can create those spillovers and kind of give a little bit of a visual nuisance. And I know we've had many commissioners make many comments about lighting on other projects before, and I thought that has been brought to my attention in specifically relation to this project, but and it sounds like the applicants have addressed that accordingly, but I think that's just important to note as we talk about lighting in the future and thoughtful commercial uses next to residential. Yeah. Any other comments? Seeing none, I would take a motion.
I move to approve.
Second it.
And a vote?
You may vote. Everyone? The motion carried 8-0.
Moving to our items 20, 21, and 22, I do have a revised language for item number 20, so I'm going to read the revised one. I understand it's postponed, but a requested postponement, but item number 20, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of resolution number R-2324-75, Shaz Investment Group LLC, requests amendment of Norman 2025 Land Use and Transportation Plan from low-density residential designation to commercial designation for 25.12 acres and high-density residential designation 14.82 acres for property generally located at the northeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 48th Avenue Northwest. Item number 21, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of ordinance number O-2324-27. Shaz Investment Group LLC requests rezoning from PUD Plan Unit Development O-1011-43 to C2 General Commercial District, 25.12 acres, and RM-6 Medium Density Apartment District, 14.82 acres for property generally located near the northeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 48th Avenue Northwest. Item number 22, consideration of approval, acceptance, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of PP-2324-9. Consideration of a preliminary plat submitted by Shaz Development Group LLC, SMC Consulting Engineers, PC for Whispering Trails Edition for 39.94 acres of property generally located near the northeast corner of Indian Hills Road and 48th Avenue Northwest. The applicant has requested postponement to the December 14th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Unless we have any questions or concerns on there, I would take a motion.
Move to approve.
And to confirm, it's a move to approve the postponement.
Thank you, the postponement.
Yes, thank you. And a vote?
You may vote. Everyone has voted, and the motion carried 8-0.
Moving to miscellaneous discussion, does staff have any information for the commission? Do commissioners have any other comments to make? If there's nothing more to come before the commission, I will declare the meeting adjourned. Thank you, have a good night. Happy 21st. 21st.
And I need a